Alrighty, welcome to the 96th edition of Before the Battle, here live on YouTube. My name is Nick Baldwin of BloodyElbow.com. Joining me, as always, is Jed Meshew of MMAfighting.com. And back for the first time in literally months is Wes Riddle of MMAsucker.com. Jed, I know how you're doing. I'll let you talk after, but Wes, you last did the show before UFC 218, Max Holloway's rematch against Jose Aldo, greatest featherweight of all time. Great fight, of course, great card. That was November 30th, 2017. It's been a while. How's it going?
Going well, fellas. I'm glad to be back on the show, and unfortunately, I missed the first card of the year. I had my break. I had some family stuff, some personal stuff going on
last year.
I'm sorry?
I just said you missed the first card of this year and the last, 4 cards of last year.
I know these past couple months have not really been the best for me, but I think being back in the school rhythm is something that's going to be able to kind of get some stuff off my mind and give me something fun to talk about, especially chilling with my boys. So yeah. I'm looking forward to this card. I'm looking forward to it. I mean, the only reason I'm really looking forward to it is because of the main event, the co-main event. But of course, being back and talking with you guys about it just gives me something to do. And I really love talking fights. So I'm glad to be back on the show and have my mind off things, trying to clear the air and get a good start to 2018 going.
I just want to say real quick that we are in an hour or so about to preview a heavyweight title fight between Stipe Miocic and Francis Ngannou. Since we last talked, Wes and us, Wes being on the show, Ngannou has fought. Has fought.
More importantly, since we last fought, since we last talked to Wes, I mean, maybe since the last time we fought too. Wes, the last time you were here, 218. You know what fight was on? Yes. You know what fight was on UFC 218?
Ngannou versus Overeem.
No, but do you know what other fight was on that card?
The main event. Holloway.
I'll give you a hint. We're going to talk about it in about 10 minutes. Abdul Razak Al Hassan defeating Saddam Amasya.
I had to think about it.
Yeah, that's right. That was the last time you were here. We broke that fight down. Now we get to break it down again because of the controversy.
Here's a plot twist.
Wes is going to go away for another 3 months, and in that card in May of this year, they're going to do the trilogy, Al Hassan and Hamasya.
What if I told you guys I didn't do the shows for the past 4 or 5 times just because I wanted this fight to talk about?
Then I'd call you really stupid.
I was going to suggest that was what you did. I thought that I was connecting the dots.
Since you were here, we have seen Holloway knock out Aldo. We've seen Brian Ortega pull off one of the better guillotines and submissions of all last year against Cub Swanson. We've seen RDA dominate Robbie Lawler in Winnipeg. We saw Chris Cyborg defeat Holly Holm, Khabib against Barboza on that card, and we saw Jeremy Stephens knock out Doo Ho Choi. We've had a lot of MMA since we last talked. That's what the gist of this first 5 minutes of the show has been. So last week we had UFC Fight Night 124. Jeremy Stephens, as I just mentioned, knocked out Doo Ho Choi in the second round with strikes. Very, very impressive performance. A bit of an upset. He was the underdog going in according to the odds makers. Let's go back to that. Jed, let's go to our results for our picks, for our DraftKings, and for our bonuses, and of course the underdog pick of the week. What do you got for us?
Well, Wes, you weren't here last week, so I informed our viewers, our raucous fan base, that all 3 of us split our yearly titles, with Nicholas doing the best in the bonuses. I did the best on DraftKings, and you edged out our picks competition by just a few over myself. 2018 is a really good start for me, boys. I just smashed all of you, all across the board, up and down, whipping ass, taking names, chewing bubblegum, the whole 9 yards. Our picks results from last week. I was your winner, going 6-5. Wes and Nick, you both went 4-7. You both had identical picks, so that was super fun.
Really?
Yep, identical picks. I think you might have been different on the Alves fight. I don't entirely remember which one Wes picked for that, and I don't have it down here. But then that fight got scratched, obviously.
Yeah.
But other than that, you went identical 4-7. Since you went 4-7, your wins were Kang, Aldana, Kraus, and Usman. I went 6-5. Those both of you had identical picks.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, jeez.
I went 6-5. I got Kang, Aldana, Kraus, and Usman as well, but I also got Jessica Rose Clark and Jeremy Stephens. I picked both of those to get the thing done, and I got your main and co-main events correctly. That was the difference. As far as our performance bonuses go, the fight of the night that last weekend was Stephens-Troy. All 3 of us predicted that as Friday night. Round of applause for everybody here. Good work. Your performances, Darren Elkins, Marco Polo Reyes. None of us got anything right. We were all the way off. Although I will give the caveat, Nick, you got a little screwed. You had Uriah Hall getting a bonus. Obviously, Uriah Hall did not end up fighting. And then our underdog pick of the week, I won this as well. Nick, you had Thiago Alves. Never sent me another underdog pick. Your only other underdog that you picked to win was Taylor and Faria, who both lost. So I guess that kind of misses for you.
I just really crapped the bed last week.
Yeah. Speaking of Faria was Wes's underdog pick. She lost. I, again, knocked it out of the park. Jeremy Stevens was my underdog pick of the week in your main event, coming through with a big second-round TKO. And you know what happens when you are the best picks record? You often are the best DK record as well. We had to do some shuffling because I think a lot of us had Hall on our team originally. I definitely had Thiago Alves. Some things got changed with fight week, but your winner, Triple Crown this week, Jed Meshew, taking it down, 529 points. It was a fairly close contest. Nick, you came in the second place with 478.5 points. Wes, you really suffered 303 points. You had a couple of guys who just didn't turn out anything for you, but I have all three of the belts firmly around my waist as we head into this next week of events.
And you know, with DraftKings, I'm going to put myself on the spots here. I was bragging. I was like, man, I'm doing quite good in DraftKings. But then I got main and co-main wrong. You got them both right. And
it was, guys. We were talking about it on our chain, our group message, and he was like, he was in charge. He was leading. I was like, it's all going to come down to the main and co-main. I got both of those right. He got both of them wrong. Both of those people were on my team, and that's how it goes.
I just found it incredible because I had both Elkins and Reyes, Polo Reyes, that is, I think as my two underdogs or two of my underdogs. I didn't pick either of them. I thought Johnson would dominate Elkins. I thought Frivola would submit Reyes, and so I was on cloud 9 for DraftKings standards, but man, didn't work out. I'm just curious, has there ever been a before the battle Triple Crown? Ever since we started,
I have a big spreadsheet of all of that, but I don't have it around me, so I can't say. I don't think so off the top of my head.
Yeah,
but it's possible.
History.
But yeah, I'm happy to have all three belts. I got one on this shoulder, one right here around the waist, and I dare you to come get them, boys. I dare you to.
I guess you're sort of getting back at me for, after you saying you'd stab me in the face or something, I just told you come to Winnipeg, and I knew you wouldn't. So,
all right, look, it was 2 degrees here in Atlanta last night, and I'm not trying to do the -40 or whatever it is there. All I'm saying,
it's actually warm here. It's warm.
Wow.
Yeah.
So it's like 10. It's 10 degrees.
It's 24.
That's super warm, below freezing. All I'm saying is, I'm the champ. Conor McGregor, get at me, son. You don't even know that life.
Okay, let's move on. We have 2 cards to talk about, so this will be maybe a long show. Maybe we'll go through it real quick if it's boring and we all agree. Who knows? Let's see what happens, and we'll play it all by ear. We'll start out with UFC 220, which goes down at the TD Garden in Boston, Massachusetts this Saturday night. The heavyweight championship is on the line in the main event. Stipe Miocic taking on Francis Ngannou, champion versus #1 contender in the division. In the co-main event, another title is on the line, this time at 205 pounds. We got Daniel D.C. Cormier, the champion after losing to John Jones. He was reinstated with the title after Jones, of course, tested positive in a USADA-administered drug test. He is taking on #2 in the world, Volkan No Time Ozdemir from Switzerland. Going to be a good card. The rest of the card isn't per se in perhaps pay-per-view standards, but we have some interesting matchups, and so I do think this will end up, looking back, this should be a fun night of fights, even though it's not the deepest pay-per-view card. But also, I think the main and co-main sort of sell the show nonetheless to us hardcore fans anyway. So we'll start out on the UFC early fight pass, early prelims. We got kicking things off at 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific. We got lightweights, Islam Makhachev taking on the returning Brazilian veteran Gleison Tibau. Good to see Tibau back after what I want to say was a 2-year USADA suspension. If it wasn't 2 years, it has been a while. I don't think he last fought Abel Trujillo. He submitted Trujillo in that fight in late 2015, but that was overturned, and Trujillo ended up with the win officially. Jed, we'll start with you. Do you like the Russian or the Brazilian here?
Man, I got to say, we talked about this before we went on air, and I think that this is a super interesting fight for the outcome. I think this fight is going to be abysmal to watch. Nick, you and I spoke relatively recently on either this podcast or perhaps your other podcast. You have so many of them, about the credit being given that I personally wanted to give to Sean Shelby and Mick Maynard for close contests that mattered, that were interesting or captivating. This is sort of that, in that it's a good contest that matters, but man, this is not something you want to open any type of a card with. There's a reason this is shoved down on Fight Pass where no one is going to watch it. Gleison Tibau coming off 2 years. Islam Makhachev is basically Khabib Nurmagomedov. He trains under him. He's the same dude, just not quite as good. Gleison Tibau is the only man to have arguably defeated Khabib Nurmagomedov. And so as a result of that, if you've seen that fight, it was not a super interesting fight. Tibau stuffed a lot of takedowns. It was sort of a bad striking match. Nurmi had to do what he had to do to kind of get by. And I can see that exact same thing happening here. I can see Islam Makhachev struggling to get takedowns. Gleison Tibau has some of the best takedown defense in the division. Historically, some of the best ever, like a 90% takedown rate. And he's a competent striker. Islam Makhachev striking is pressure-based, and it's not super clean. I gotta say, I don't know. This, for me, this feels really like a coin flip. I previously picked Gleison Tibau. I'm going to change that. I'm going to go with Islam Makhachev. The 2-year-long layoff has me feeling some type of way about it. And Makhachev, I think, can maybe do something similar to what Khabib did to squeak out a win here. But I will not be surprised at all if Tibau is just a little bit better than he was in the Nurmagomedov fight, and so then gets the edge on the judges' scorecards.
I'm going pretty much in the end just with my pick first. I'm going Islam Makhachev, and kind of for a few reasons that Jed pointed out. This is going to be Tibau's, I think, 27th fight, which is going to tie him with Frank Mir and maybe Tito Ortiz or somebody else for the most fights ever in UFC history, which is pretty cool. Tibau's a longtime veteran. He's beat a lot of guys throughout his career. I know he's beat Jeremy Stevens, RDA, and debatably, when he fought Khabib Nurmagomedov, a lot of people thought Khabib won that one. I know that Gleison, his last fight came against Abel Trujillo. He got a first round, I think, rear naked choke, but he ended up testing positive for erythropoietin, which is, of course, EPO, and a lot of people know EPO for being what stimulates red blood cell growth, thus pretty much helping oxygen travel throughout, and that can benefit the muscles, cardiorespiratory system, blah, blah, blah. And gives you an advantage. So he tested positive for that, ended up taking the suspension, and now he's coming back after a pretty long layoff. Before that, I think he had fought Tony Ferguson, got choked out pretty early. I'm kind of concerned just in picking Tibau, despite some wins on his resume, of course, being more notable than Makhachev. I don't know if Tibau, how he's going to look in the octagon. We haven't seen him. There's no real footage to go off of. And the fact that he tested positive for something that really benefits how your performance, that now that he's probably off that, or hopefully off that, who knows how he's going to be able to perform, because sometimes it can drain you a lot more than if you never did it to begin with. I like Islam Makhachev. I think he's a really talented fighter. He is not really the most entertaining to watch. His striking game's still rookie level, but his grappling is sensational. He's got some of the best grappling in the division, I think. Doesn't really make the fights exciting, doesn't look for a lot of punches, tries to find submissions more often. For kind of all these reasons, I'm leaning Makhachev by maybe a late submission. We saw Tibau, of course, give up his neck there to Tony Ferguson. Ferguson's a solid grappler, but I think that Makhachev is just a little bit better just when we look at that one aspect of martial arts. And again, it's mixed martial arts. I don't know how it's going to factor in this fight, but I do think that Makhachev, just if he can get Tibau down, I think he's just going to be able to grind him out, either get that late submission victory or unanimous decision in the end.
I'm with you guys. I think Islam Makhachev smothers Gleison Tibau in this fight. And I'm high on Makhachev, don't get me wrong, but this is probably more so just a fade on Tibau. Tibau coming off a 2-year suspension, coming off a long layoff. He hasn't fought in over 2 years. He's getting up there in age. I want to say he's probably reaching 40, if not 40 already. Okay, 34. That's not actually as old as I thought, but he has a lot of miles on him. He's 40. What is he professionally? He's according to UFC.com, 41-11, and so he's had a ton of UFC fight or MMA fights, UFC fights, a lot of experience, and he's taken enough damage where He's it's hard to trust him coming off this layoff, coming off the suspension. How does he look not on this banned substance? Who knows? We'll find out. But Makhachev is younger. He's probably hungrier, and he's training with really good competition, really good training partners. Of course, at AKA with Khabib and DC for what it's worth. Luke Rockhold, Kane, although he's a lot smaller than those guys, but nonetheless still in the same room. Tebow, I mean, he's at ATT, so he's at a great gym too. Probably one of the best, or definitely one of the best, maybe even the best in the world. But I just think stylistically, this isn't a very good matchup for the Brazilian. I expect Islam to do okay on the feet. Tebow's never been a huge striker by any means, and I think Makhachev is getting better on the feet. But where he's really going to shine is on the mat, as always. He's going to be able to get on top of Tebow pretty frequently. I think he'll also look to get takedowns at the end of the round, just because fighters like to do that, and he should be able to take Tebow down more or less at will. Tebow himself isn't a bad ground fighter, and he'll look to defend, and he will some of them, but Makhachev is a very talented grappler, and he's getting better. And so I like Makhachev here. I like him by decision, although a late stoppage, whether it's ground and pound, TKO, or a submission, wouldn't surprise me all too much. We move to the early Fight Pass prelim, the feature prelim. We got Matt the Mangler Bissett making his debut against tough Latin America winner Enrique Barzola, 22-7 from the U.S., taking on 14-3-1 from Peru. Jed, we'll go to you, Bissett or Barzola.
Before we do that, as you fellas may have noticed, I took a quick step away, changed my background position. So 2 questions. One, is my sound okay?
Your sound is okay, and you're like what did they say? You're like Batman, where I was looking at UFC.com, I didn't even see you change that. Yeah.
Exactly. Well, I was having a bit of electronic difficulty, so I shifted up my position in the house. Just wanted to make sure my sound levels were good. 2, Wes, I believe you took Makhachev. But Nikolai, where were you on that pick?
I picked Makhachev.
All right, awesome. And so then I've got that recorded, and now we're moving to what? Bissett Barzola?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Ooh, what a fight that no one cares about. Matt Bissett is a guy who lost on Dana White Tuesday Night Contender Series, got kind of stomped with the quickness there. I had picked him to win that fight. I was very, very wrong. He's a dude who probably deserves to be in the UFC. The Dana White Tuesday Night Contender thing shouldn't have mattered. He should have been in a while ago. Had been on a 7-fight win streak up until the Tuesday Night Contender.
And Kurt Hollabaugh is a great fighter.
Yeah, and Kurt Hollabaugh is a guy who definitely should have been in the UFC. It's hard not to root for Matt Bissett. He's a really good guy. He had leukemia as a child. Survived that, came back as BJJ brown belt. The thing is, he's just not a great fighter. Like, he's a good fighter, but he's not a great fighter. He's not a great athlete, which is kind of a big flaw in his game here. He's a competent striker, but really his bread and butter is a sub game. He jumps on openings. He's pretty crafty on the ground. Against Enrique Barzola, I don't think he's going to be crafty enough to do much on the ground. And I just think this game fits very well for Barzola here. He's an explosive athlete, good timing on his counters, a good strong double leg with an explosive finish. He likes to control on top but not like control. He takes him down, works a little bit. They get back up. He just kind of wash, rinses, and repeats it. And I think that he can do that effectively. I just don't think Bissett can catch him, and I think Barzola can dominate the takedown game pretty much as he wants. And if this stays purely striking, I also think Barzola wins that. So any way you slice it, I think Enrique Barzola is taking this down. So give me Enrique Barzola. I'm going to say decision, but I won't be surprised if he gets a stoppage in there.
Yeah, I'm leaning Barzola as well in this one. I think Enrique Barzola is just a little bit more kind of dynamic, especially. I actually really like watching him strike on the feet. A lot of his strikes come with pretty smooth motions and throws a kick every now and then. He's just pretty technical with the striking game. I feel like he stays really calculated in all of his fights. And that's one thing I think is pretty cool about Barzola. He does have one loss in the UFC. It was to Kyle Bochniak, but I'm pretty sure if anybody watched that fight, everybody would know Barzola won that one. It was a horrendous decision back in 2016. I thought Barzola pretty much took every single round, but I don't know what the judges saw. We'll have to just let them keep their own opinion, but I'm pretty sure Barzola took that one decisively. So in my eyes, he's 4-0 in the UFC. He's beat some pretty decent guys. Gabriel Benitez has shown some pretty impressive strides recently, and he's beat some good guys throughout his career. Barzola has a win earlier on against my homie, Humberto Bendene. He beat him by submission before he was in the UFC. He's got some pretty solid wins. Now, Bissett, of course, he's a longtime veteran of the sport. He had some time in Bellator where he showed some pretty decent strides, beat Diego Nunes, but that was kind of past prime Diego Nunes. Nick Piedmont, past prime Piedmont. I'm kind of in the end going Barzola for another reason. Bissett's taken a lot of damage in some of his recent fights. We saw him get knocked out by Lenny Wheeler in CES, I think is the promotion. And then there was a fight that he had where he fought Pinjatore, and Pinjatore almost knocked him out in the first round. But Bissett was able to pretty much come back with a heel hook in a fight that he was losing. Even up to that point, the second round was definitely going to Pinjatore. Pinjatore was on top and was landing some ground and pound, but got his leg caught. And then Kurt Holloway, fantastic fighter, was able to get the knockout the last time. So I question his chin. He's a solid fighter, but I don't know if he's going to be able to hang with Barzola in this one. I think Barzola is just going to be more technical on the feet, land those double legs like Jed said, because he is pretty good at that, and probably squeeze out a unanimous decision. I think Bissett, maybe he could pull off an upset, but I really think that Barzola is just a little bit more dynamic and pretty much everywhere this fight goes.
I'm very tempted to pick the underdog Matt Bissett here, solely because he is so much more active than Enrique Barzola. Barzola is the better fighter. He is more technical. He is a lot more athletic, and I think that's kind of key in this fight. And Bissett is taking a lot of damage, but Bissett is just so much more active. I mean, looking at their landed per minute for significant strikes, 6.2 for Bissett, 3.52 for Barzola. That's fairly significant in my opinion. But those few factors that I mentioned just now sort of lean me towards the Peruvian here, Enrique Barzola. And as I said, Bissett has taken a lot of damage. Barzola hasn't. He's fresher in his career. He hasn't been around as long. He seems to have quite a bit of potential. He's not the most exciting fighter, but he has decent leg kicks. He has good takedowns. His striking's getting better. He's well-rounded, and he's quite technical. He's he's just all around a good, solid fighter. Where Matt Bissett, the guy is super exciting. The guy puts on shows. His 5-round title defenses at CES are super fun to watch. But I'm a little concerned about his last fight. It was a devastating knockout loss to Kurt Holloway, as we talked about. And so I don't know this matchup for him. I just want to throw one thing in there that I don't know if this will affect the matchup at all. But one thing Bissett told me when I interviewed him a few days ago is that he'd been eyeing this fight for a long time, like way before it was a potential of happening for whatever reason. And I think he just has always liked the matchup. He's always been wanting to fight Barzola, which is odd to me because it's not like Enrique Barzola has made too big of waves. He's still somewhat unknown, but I found that interesting. I mean, Matt Bissett, he got the fight he's wanted for years, which, it's kind of interesting. Just figured I'd throw that out there. But I'm leaning Barzola. There's too many things against Matt Bissett, in my opinion, for me to favor him just because he's more active and he's tough and he's gritty. Barzola is more technical. He's more athletic. Seems to have the better skills. He has more ways to win here too. I think he'll be able to get on top of Bissett as well. And so I like Barzola by decision. I think Bissett can make it close. And man, I'm tempted to pick him, but I just can't quite pull the trigger. Enrique Barzola by decision. We move on to the FS1 prelim card, 4 fights starting at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. We go to the featherweight division. We got Dan Ige taking on Julio Arce. Got to get the pronunciation wrong or right. And I think I pronounced Dan's last name wrong. IGE, I think is IG or something. I don't know. But Jed, who do you got here?
I have no idea how to pronounce his name for the record. Wait, who did you end up taking, Nick? Did you?
I picked Barzola.
You did? Okay, because you went for a long time trying to convince yourself to be something fun and different, and then you decided to be a coward. I should have expected.
Pretty much.
All right, IG versus Arce. Arce? Does anyone know how to pronounce either of
Arce.
these names? Arce? Okay, dude.
It's awesome. Julio Arce.
Julio Arce. I'm looking over my notes at the moment because I do not
need pronunciation notes.
I should have done those. I actually genuinely do when I'm taking things more seriously than I was for this card. I was just trying to get back in the swing of things. But anyway, the notes I have are that this is a close fight because I have little confidence in either man. Not that the fight is necessarily all that close. I don't know what the odds are. I believe Arce is the favorite, minus 150, comebacks 130 on IG. IG's a BJJ brown belt. He was supposed to fight Charles Rosa in this fight. Rosa pulled out with injury, so Arce is coming in with, I think, like about 2 weeks' notice. I think it was first week of this year, somewhere in the middle of January, January like 4th or something, is when he got signed on for this. IG is okay. He's not a fluid striker, but he has some pop in his hands. What he really wants to do is be working takedowns, grapple from top position. On bottom, he's actually fairly bad. He doesn't have a lot of get up. And I have some questions and concerns about his cardio. Arce is just a way better athlete here, and that's why I'm picking him in the end. He's definitely the better striker than IG. IG is going to need to work takedowns, but he's not a great takedown artist. And Arce, particularly in his Dana White Tuesday Night Contender series, showed a pretty competent ability to kind of stay on his feet here. He's got fairly fast hands for the division, got some good pop in them, and he's confident. He can get stuck in the clinch, and that's sort of my reticence here is maybe IG pushes him up against the cage, hangs on to him for the clinch a while, and then gets him down and is able to do something. But I just think Arce can hit him a bunch in the face, and IG's not super defensively responsible. So give me Arce with a late TKO, third round.
Yeah, I think I'm going to go Arce too in this one. I like some of the points that he brought up with his fight when he fought Peter Petties or Petties, however you say his name, back in Contender Series. He did show a couple holes there in the clinch positions where he kind of would get pressured up there against it, but sometimes he was able to circle out and he was able to get on the outside and land some good shots. And on the feet, he showed a pretty impressive striking game. There were times he was in southpaw and he'd land some really, really impressive right jabs where he was able to sneak in and kind of land quick and pop back out. The only two losses he has on his record are the same guy, Brian Kelleher. And I remember I've actually seen the first the fight with Brian Kelleher. I thought Julio Arce won that one. He had a really strong third round, almost finished him with ground and pound a couple different times, but they gave the majority decision to Kelleher. It was a great fight. They had a rematch, still pretty close, but Kelleher got a guillotine in that one and was able to get the second win. But debatably, it could have been 1-1. Kelleher's a pretty solid athlete overall, but still shows a couple holes in this game. But I do think Kelleher is a tougher guy than pretty much anybody Eigel or Ig, however you say his name, not Eigel, has fought in his career. Brian Kelleher is just a lot more athletic than a lot of those guys. And the fact that I think Arce was able to get a victory over him, in my opinion, I think that kind of stands for a lot, especially for a guy making his debut. Two guys making their debut. I guess this could be the first ever Contender Series winner versus Contender Series winner fight in the UFC, which I guess is pretty cool because I like Contender Series quite a bit. Not to ramble anymore, I'm going to take Julio Arce by probably a decision. He did show some impressive striking, so maybe he could be the first guy to stop Dan Ice, whatever. We'll have to see, but I think Arce is going to be just a little bit more athletic in this one, especially when it comes to some of the game on the feet.
Tough fight, close fight. I think the odds indicate that pretty well. But I think Julio Arce deserves to be a slight favorite here, which he is, as Jed mentioned. I think he said minus 150. Seems fair to me. IG is the better. I mean, it kind of really comes down to who's able to defend the takedowns, or basically, can Arce defend the takedowns? It comes down to where this fight takes place. IG seems to be the better ground fighter. He has quite a number of submissions under his belt. Arce has a handful as well, so he shouldn't be underestimated on the ground, but IG sort of seems to be better than Arce, I would think. It seems like that anyways. IG, for what it's worth, did win his Contender Series fight by submission. He wasn't signed immediately, nor was Arce, so this fight is kind of interesting. First Contender Series guy versus Contender Series guy, but neither guy was signed on the show right after that fight. They're stepping up just afterwards. Arce on short notice. And so pretty interesting fight. I think Arce better striker, RJ better grappler / wrestler. I'm thinking Arce is able to keep it on the feet. IJ isn't a guy who's always looking for the takedown. I mean, he seems sometimes okay to strike at times, and I think that actually will cost him here. So I like Arce by decision, but really could go either way. But yeah, 13-2, Julio Arce by decision. We move on to a fun flyweight bout between Dustin Ortiz and Alexandre Pantoja. Wes, we'll go to you. Throw you off guard a little bit. Ortiz or the Cannibal?
I like it. I love when you throw him off guard.
No, that's fine with me. I'm actually looking forward to this one. I think Jed actually said it too off air. I think this is one of the better fights on the card as well. Both guys are pretty solid for what they are in the flyweight division. Of course, they're not really the high strength, but they're not the lowest strength, and they like to scrap here and there. Dustin Ortiz, he's coming off a pretty impressive victory in his last fight where he was able to knock out Hector Sandoval in like 15 seconds or 20 seconds. Really, really quick. I don't think anybody expected that, especially the fact that Dustin Ortiz hasn't stopped anybody since Willie Gates, and Willie Gates wasn't that great. And then before that, it was before probably he was even in the UFC. Dustin Ortiz had a lot of close fights coming in there where he lost the fight of Moreno, Formiga, Wilson Hayes, and Joseph Benavidez. Debatably, I guess I thought he won against Zach McCosby, but it wasn't a really, really great fight. Scoggins' fight back in the day and the Ray Borg one, I thought Scoggins might have took that one over Ortiz, but they gave it to Ortiz. Borg, a pretty solid athlete now, showed a lot of improvements. Ortiz got a victory in that one too. But then Dustin Ortiz, I remember when he fought John Moraga, I thought Ortiz won that one. And Ortiz was able to well, he didn't get the victory, but a lot of people did think he did. Ortiz is a pretty solid fighter. He shows some impressive striking games, and sometimes he's able to make some takedowns and try to make it interesting, but he's not really – I don't know if he's made any drastic improvements. And I'm saying that I know he was able to get a quick knockout in his last fight, which is pretty impressive, but we didn't get to see what he could do in a full extent of a 15-minute fight. And going up against a guy like Alexandre Pantoja, who is a pretty seasoned athlete, a lot of fights on his record, only 2 losses, one to Formiga, and then one back in the day to somebody I don't know. Pantoja's never been stopped before, and Pantoja's the guy that's kind of always in there to go kind of 15 minutes if he needs to. I'm really having a struggle, and I have had a struggle trying to pick this one because I feel like it could be a fight that goes either way. Pantoja sometimes excels when he's able to get you down on the ground, and that's kind of one thing that we've seen back in some of his previous fights. How he was able to capitalize on Demasio Peg. But he also has some crafty knockout skills too, which we haven't seen a whole lot recently. Dustin Ortiz can maybe have a little bit of an advantage on the feet, but I think that if this fight hits the mat, I feel like Pantoja is going to be the guy that can get the victory. I think he's just a little bit more well-rounded and kind of knows what he does and knows what he needs to do in positions when it hits the ground. I feel like this could be a fight that could maybe be a split decision, to be honest. But in the end, I'm actually leaning Alexandre Pantoja. I think that his skill set might just be a little bit more technical than Dustin Ortiz, but Ortiz could prove me wrong just like he did the last fight and get a quick knockout. Who knows? But I think that this one is likely going to go to a decision. I didn't do a lot of film study on this one. Jed can definitely fill you in a little bit more on this one, but I think that Pantoja is just a little bit more well-rounded and can definitely take this one if it hits the mat and possibly squeeze out a decision victory. I do think it's going to be really close, so I'm thinking like we'll probably see 29-28 on the board, and I think it's going to be split, probably maybe unanimous, but I'm going to go Pantoja and with one of those two methods.
Well, I agree with a lot of what Wes says. Maybe have some disagreements with some of it. Not to bury the lead here, and because I do notice we're kind of taking some time here, and we got a lot of fights to get to, so I'll try and be a bit quicker here. I'm going the other end. I'm taking Dustin Ortiz here. I won't be at all surprised if Alexandre Pantoja wins this fight. I do think Wes is right when he says he's got a little bit more well-rounded skills. I mean, Alexandre Pantoja is a guy who he was the #1 seed on Tough for a reason. He was a guy who should have been in the UFC before that season of Tough. Looked to be the favorite going in the house and kind of got upset. And he got upset, and that's the reason I'm taking against him here. He seems to have kind of plateaued at where he is as a fighter. On the regional circuit, he really looked like a guy who could come in and make some noise in the division. I know he is undefeated so far in his UFC run, but it hasn't been as impressive as you would expect. And I mean, even his run through the Tough House, he struggled a lot more than you kind of would have thought for a guy with as much experience as he has and as many skills in all areas. Because he's a dude who can strike, he can grapple, and he can wrestle. It's all three. Like, he's the total package in a lot of ways. But I think he may just sort of be one of those guys who, when they make the jump up, nothing kind of fits as well together. He's just not seeming to put it together for me. And Dustin Ortiz has sort of historically been that exact guy, a good but not great fighter. He's lost to the best fighters he's fought. But I do think we're seeing market improvement from Dustin Ortiz time in and time out. Who did he fight last? Somebody refreshed.
Hector Sandoval.
Yeah, no, the Hector Sandoval fought. But before that was the submission loss to Brandon Moreno. Yeah. Moreno kind of has announced himself as a revelation, a super athletic guy in the division. Hector Sandoval, I know that fight was very close. I don't want to take too much from it, but I did think that just in the 15 seconds that fight happened, I thought Dustin Ortiz looked much better on the feet, not just because he got a knockout. His movement was much more fluid. He was hitting some switch steps, some shift steps on there. Just looked like he was much happier on the feet, and that's always been kind of his downfall, is that he is a scramble-based wrestling guy and didn't really have a ton of a striking game. But you go back to the Makovsky fight, I thought his striking looked improved there. Go Brandon Moreno fight, his striking was still looking better in the Moreno fight before he ended up getting tapped out there after he took the big head kick. And then the Sandoval fight, I think this is a guy who's improving, and he already was a good fighter in his division. I mean, the losses he's had, Brandon Moreno, Jussier Formiga, Wilson Hayes, Joseph Benavidez, these guys all of those people are challenging for titles. Like, that's the kind of skill level we're at. And frankly, I just don't think Alexander Pantoja is ever going to get to that plateau. And so a close fight, I won't be super surprised if Pantoja, who is a good grappler, manages to sneak to the back in a scramble or something. But I think more often than not, I like the pace that Dustin Ortiz puts on Alexander Pantoja. And I think he's just going to edge away a victory here. So give me Pantoja for the upset by decision.
You said you're picking Ortiz.
Oh, that's right. I'm sorry. Yeah, sorry. Yes. I'm taking Dustin Ortiz for the upset. Dustin Ortiz by decision. That means, sir, Nicholas, you have to arbitrate. Me and Wes, we're at loggerheads. Who's right?
This is a close fight. This is very close, and I will tell you who I'm picking, but I'm not confident. Basically, how I look at this fight, Ortiz, it's hard to pick. This is a weird fight because not as many people are familiar with Pantoja, but he's a good fighter. He doesn't have an 18-2 record for no reason. He is a very solid fighter. He's getting better on the feet. He's a tremendous grappler. And Dustin Ortiz, I mean, he's a very good fighter. He has that sort of veteran savvy, though, and I think that sort of comes into play here. He has fought, as Jed went through, and Wes, for what it's worth. Ortiz has fought the best of the best. He's fought two-time title challenge Joseph Benavidez. He lost. I mean, he's losing some of these fights, but he lost to Wilson Hayes, Jussier Formiga, and then of course Moreno, which was, I believe, maybe an upset or it was a close fight. But he these sort of, I don't put Pantoja under that category. I think Pantoja is actually getting better. I think he has some potential, but I'm not sure he's title challenger quality of a fighter. Dustin Ortiz, I'm not sure. He's not either. I like Ortiz's. He seems a bit more well-rounded here, honestly. Like, his wrestling's pretty solid. His striking is better than Pantoja's. Pantoja really just has the grappling advantage here. I think the American has a few more ways to win. I don't think he's going to want to take this to the ground. I think he's going to strike with Pantoja. And that's going to be a little interesting. Pantoja's the bigger guy. Height actually is dead on, which is surprising me. He has a slight reach advantage. Shouldn't be too big of an issue for Ortiz. But Ortiz sort of likes to dictate the fight when he's fighting on the feet, and I think he will be able to. Pantoja typically has close fights. I guess I'm just referring to his debut against Eric Shelton. That was a split decision. His second fight was, of course, that submission win over Neil Series. So it's been a while since we've seen Pantoja. Ortiz last fought. I guess it's been a while since we've seen Ortiz as well. Both fought last summer. I'm going to go Dustin Ortiz. So Wes is on an island by himself, and I'm a little surprised just because he's going the favorite and two of us are going the underdog. But I I like Ortiz, not by a lot, but I think he gets it done. He's able to outstrike Pantoja on the feet over the course of 3 rounds. I'll go for a split decision win because he has struggled with grapplers in the past. Wilson Hayes, Juicy Formiga, and Moreno all come to mind. And Pantoja, I don't know if he's under the, at the level of someone like Juicy Formiga or Hayes, but he might be able to dictate the fight on the ground. So it's a tough one to call, but I'm going to side with 17-7 Dustin Ortiz, number 10 in the flyweight division. We move on to the highly anticipated rematch we already have mentioned. Sabo the Problem Homasi taking on Abdul Razak Al Hassan in the 170-pound division. Jed, last time out, I think we probably all picked Razak Al Hassan. Do you? I know I did. I assume.
I have no idea. I feel like we probably all did, but I have no idea.
So we're running it back, and for anybody that doesn't know, we're running it back because in the first fight, Herb Dean, great referee, not on that evening, back at UFC 218 on December 3rd, maybe 2nd, December 2nd, I don't know, one of the 2 days. He stepped in early. It was a premature stoppage. He thought
that's not his fault.
No. I'm not saying it's his fault. I saw the angle on the camera angle. I saw it did look like Homasi had gotten knocked down, but nonetheless, Herb Dean stepped in premature. Blame him. Don't blame him. Decide for yourself. Nonetheless, we're running it back. Saba Homasi, Abdul Razak Al Hassan, number 2. Jed, who's the pick?
I think it was a fine stoppage. I think it's reasonable that this rematch happened because very clearly Homasi was not out. But the way Homasi dropped, it looked like the way a fighter drops when he eats an uppercut against the fence and is unconscious. And Homasi just let his legs go out from under him to change levels for a shot. It wasn't like he ducked down and drove in. He just collapsed underneath himself and then tried to grab a leg. It looked really bad, so I get it. Maybe this time Saba Homasi will be smarter about the way he gives off appearances. I don't fucking know. I feel very little about this fight. I feel little confidence in picking it. I'm taking Abdul Razak Al Hassan for the same reasons I took him last time. He's a better athlete. On the feet, they're fairly evenly matched. They're both going to either be tight and slow paced or just throw in bolos, wild, aggressive, and seeing what happens. But Al Hassan has a long judo background to fall back on. I think he can win in the clinch, and I think he's just a better athlete. So give me Abdul Razak Al Hassan to actually get the stoppage this time, not a premature one in any capacity. I think he's going to pound him out somewhere in the second round.
Yeah. Because we have a lot of fights to talk about, I'm just going to give my pick. It's Abdul Razak Al Hassan for pretty much, again, the same reasons I picked the last time. I think he's just a more powerful striker. I think his aggressive style is definitely something that Homasi needs to worry about. We saw kind of the outcome of what happened the first time. Despite the stoppage, I feel like Al Hassan was able to get the better strikes off in there. Homasi's been knocked out, I think, like 4 or 5 times in his mixed martial arts career. We've never seen Al Hassan in a lot of danger of getting knocked out. Still was able to land some solid shots against Ahmedov, which was his one loss. But it's hard against a guy to go against a guy who's had as many knockouts as Al Hassan. Picking him to lose against a guy who's been stopped by knockout as many times as he has, especially the fact that we're seeing this rematch. I think Abdul Razak Al Hassan is going to be able to get the stoppage. I'm going first round knockout again, just like I did the last time, which they fought a couple months ago.
I'm going to go with Abdul Razak Al Hassan as well, complete the hat trick here. Nothing is, to me, as far as breaking the fight down and predicting it, nothing has changed since they met in the cage back in last month. I think the only thing is I guess, slightly more confident. No, I can't even say that because I was about to say I'm more confident in Al Hassan this time around than even last, but I feel like we saw Homasi give Al Hassan some problems, and so, both guys were hurt in that pretty brief slugfest, and so Homasi could catch him. He certainly could, but it seems like Al Hassan is the better athlete. He's a better striker as far as technique goes, and I think he has the better chances of rocking Homasi and putting him away for real this time. So give me Abdul Razak Al Hassan by KO or TKO, probably midway through the fight, round 1, round 2, within 10 minutes. We go to the featured FS1 prelim. Kyle Bochniak Crash taking on newcomer Brandon Killer B. Davis from Dana White's Tuesday Night Contender Series. If you don't remember Davis, he put on maybe Dana White Tuesday Night Contender Series best fight of that whole season. So it's Bochniak versus newcomer Davis. Jed, who is the pick?
Oh, sorry, I didn't realize I was muted. I don't give a shit. I don't know what Kyle Bochniak does good in fighting. Straight up, I just genuinely don't have any idea. Brendan, I think Davis is a better athlete. I think he is a more fluid striker. I think Kyle Bochniak can maybe try and work takedowns here, but Davis proven himself to be fairly adept at keeping things standing. My only concern here really is that it's Davis's debut, but when you're debuting against somebody like Kyle Bochniak, why are you taking a photo with your phone?
I was supposed to send you guys a message in the chat. There's some weird thing that happens when we're recording before the battle, and for some reason it doesn't happen during the MMA Circus or Beyond Combat, despite using the exact same program, Google Hangouts. My screen is fuzzy right now, and it happens quite frequently on Before the Battle midway through the show. So I'm going to let you guys continue. I'll be back in literally 2 minutes.
Well, okay, good. I'm sorry. That sucks for you, Wes, because that means you have to talk about this fight for 2 minutes because I don't have anything else to say.
I'll be back.
I am taking Davis because I think Bochniak is just not as good of an athlete, and Davis certainly has the swagger and confidence of a man who thinks that he's good, and Kyle Bochniak's just bad at fighting. He's not bad, but like he's a complete nothing as far as what you give a shit about. And Davis at least looks like he could be an exciting banger. So give me Brandon Davis. I'll go decision.
Yeah, I'm kind of leaning the same way. There's nothing that Bochniak has ever done to really get me excited about him. The Barzola fight is actually something I touched on earlier. I thought Barzola actually took every single round in that one, and they ended up giving it to Kyle. Yeah, and they ended up giving it to Kyle Bochniak. I thought that was pretty ridiculous. Barzola showed a really well-rounded game in that one. Even got a takedown in there. Like you talked about, too, his double legs are fantastic, but Bochniak somehow got a victory. In my eyes, of course, I think he's 0-3 in the UFC. The Rosa fight, yeah, it was fun, but that was his debut. Had nothing really to lose. Jeremy Kennedy absolutely dominated him with his takedown abilities. And when it comes to the striking game, there's nothing really too impressive about Bochniak that stands out with his game. Brandon Davis, as you mentioned, he's a scrapper, man. He loves to throw on the feet. He can get some takedowns in there as well. He likes to keep his fights exciting. For all I know, maybe he could get a victory by knockout. I do think that Brandon Davis is going to come in here and hopefully impress a lot of people. I like his game. I think he's a pretty cool guy. He has a pretty cool personality. And his win over Austin Arnett means a lot more to me than anything that Kyle Bochniak is really doing in his mixed martial arts career. Austin Arnett's a pretty good fighter. And Brandon Davis was able to beat him. So I'm going Brandon Davis. I think maybe a stoppage, but I'm leaning the same way with you. I think a decision is probably the most likely outcome, but seeing the Bochniak's never been stopped by strikes. But I do think that Brandon Davis is just a little bit better of an athlete and can get the job done.
Okay, Nikolai, are you here?
Jed, I assumed you pick Davis.
I took Davis as well, so is it a clean sweep?
Yeah, Brandon Davis I'm picking. Don't have a ton to say about this fight. I've never been super impressed with Kyle Bochniak. I know he beat Barzola, who we talked about earlier, but as Wes said, exactly, it was a bad decision. Should have gone Barzola's way. Other than that, I'm just trying to remember and look back. So so he lost to Jeremy Kennedy. I mean, he should be 0-3 in the UFC. All decisions, so it's not like he's getting blown out of the water, but none of these fights have been super competitive. I guess you could argue the Barzola one was kind of, but still should have lost. And then, of course, he went Charles Rosa, Barzola, Kennedy, and just not a super impressive run in the UFC. Now, I don't know where Brandon Davis's sort of ceiling is or how much potential he has, but he had a heck of a showing on the Contender Series over the summer. He's a more active fighter. I know this is not really accurate because of his Contender Series fight, but the significant strikes in that fight, and this is only based off that one fight because that's the only UFC fight he had or whatever. But it's 8.93 per minute, which is kind of crazy compared to Bochniak's bit more reasonable 2.58. Davis has more ways to win. He's well-rounded, just a better fighter. Brandon Davis by decision. I don't think he stops Bochniak. Bochniak seems to be a fairly tough fighter, but Davis, I like him by not a super lopsided decision, but I think it's going to be a clear win for Killer B, who stole Ben Saunders' nickname, I must add. We move on to the pay-per-view main card. We got 5 fights for a hefty price tag of, I think, $5 more than usual, right?
Should be fucking $20 less. God, this pay-per-view main card sucks ass.
No kidding. Okay, so we start out at 10 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Pacific with bantamweights. Thomas Almeida, number 10 versus number 14, Rob Font. Fun fight to kick things off. Wes, I'll go to you. Almeida, Font, who do you got?
Man, I'm really looking forward to this one. I know it's maybe not a fight that maybe most people are looking for that are UFC fans, but then again, when it comes to mixed martial arts fan, this is going to be a really fun fight to watch. I'm pretty high on both these guys. I think they both have a couple holes in their games that they need to polish up, but I think overall, it's going to be a really fun one to watch. Thomas Almeida, we've seen in this last fight that he was hit quite a bit. I feel like we've pretty much in his past few fights, especially starting with the Brad Pickett fight, we've seen that he doesn't really think too much about him getting hit. He just, of course, got stopped quite a bit beforehand. Or not stopped quite. He stopped a lot of guys beforehand, just going in there and throwing down. He's a really impressive striker, but he gets hit a little bit too much for me. As we saw in the Jimmy Rivera fight, Morales landed a couple fights, nothing spectacular. Cody Garbrandt, Brad Pickett, who's now retired, landed quite a bit of volume there on Almeida. And Rob Font's a guy that likes to throw a lot of pressure there in his fights too. And I did a little bit of film study on Rob Font just to kind of break down some of his game. And there's a lot of things that I liked, especially when he fought Douglas De Silva Andrade, or however you say his name. There was a few things that Rob Font did that I really liked, especially the fact that there was a time in the first round that he started plotting up against the clinch positions with Andrade standing up, and he started wrapping his arm around there to secure a guillotine choke, which didn't work, but he was setting it up for later in the fight, which is what he got in the second round, trying to figure out how he reacts in those clinch positions. There were times that he would dip down and land a beautiful right hand there that could hurt Andrade in different exchanges that I really like about Font. Pretty much what I learned is that Font has some fantastic fight IQ. I say that, though, knowing that his last fight, he did make a little technical error there when he fought Pedro Munoz, but he did get tagged there with the left hand, and I guess he kind of ran out of options. They pressured up against the cage. He could have tried to run out, but Munoz was bringing it on. Made a mistake there shooting for the takedown, got guillotine choked, but just to think about making a pick on this one, I think I'm going to go with for a little, I guess it's a little bit of an upset. I'm going to go Rob Font. I think that his chin is a little bit tougher. I think that he might be able to take a little bit more damage in this one. And I really think that maybe he's going to be able to possibly he could get a stoppage in this one. I feel like it could go either way. And I think if Font sticks to his calculated game plan that I've seen him use in other fights, I feel like he can really break Almeida down and show some of the holes that Almeida has, especially in a striking when it comes to striking defense. Almeida could go in there and starch Rob Font just like he's done to a lot of athletes, but I do question that durability. I think Rob Font's a little bit more tougher. I think that he's a little bit more calculated with his game. I think that he can land some takedowns in there if need be, because he has shown some pretty impressive takedowns here and there before. I feel like a lot of people just see Almeida as being this guy who gets a lot of knockouts and pick him really quick, just because that's what he's done in the past. But I do think that Rob Font could get an upset here. So just for fun, I'm going to pick Rob Font by either a second-round knockout or a unanimous decision victory, just being the little bit more technical of a fighter.
Well, we have dissension in our ranks, then I'm going the other way. Give me Tommy Almeida. Give me Tommy Two Guns. I think a lot of what Wes said is correct. I think I will disagree that Rob Font's going to win a decision here. If Rob Font's going to win, I think he has to win early because, like Wes says, Tommy Almeida not the most defensively responsible striker. Doesn't seem to care that he gets hit a lot, and frankly doesn't seem to get hit well a lot. Like, he doesn't seem to take punches all that well. He's a guy that's been cracked a lot early in his career, so he's a young guy, but kind of some miles on that chin. So these are concerning things. Rob Font hits pretty hard. I think if he comes out and puts it on Thomas Almeida early, then maybe something can get cooking here. I just don't know that he's going to, and I don't think that he's going to, and I'm not sure he's working with the same type of game like a Cody Garbrandt. If you remember before the Almeida fight, Garbrandt was like, dude, Almeida, you get hit and hurt in every fight, and when I do that, I'm going to hit and hurt you, and then you're going to be done. And I was exactly right. I don't know that Rob Font is going to he doesn't have the same type of finishing killer instinct as that. I think he will come out. I think he maybe clips Almeida in an early exchange, and then Almeida's going to get cooking. And from that point forward, Rob Font's a really good fighter. I think his jab could be a very effective tool here, but Thomas Almeida is bringing much more heavy artillery to this game. I think as the fight wears on, he's going to start ripping some mean shots, and that's going to carry the day here. I think Almeida can either win a decision taking the latter half of the fight or get a stoppage somewhere. I know Rob Font's a tough dude, but I think maybe he can end up with a stoppage there. And if it goes to the ground somehow for whatever reason, I think Thomas Almeida is probably the better grappler as well here. So give me Tommy Two Guns all day long here. And Nikolai, you get to once again arbitrate. Who's right, me or Wes? Last time it was me. Is it me again?
The perks of going last. I get to, keep the anticipation up until with the, what was the fight? With the Bissett Barzola one, I made it sound the whole prediction like I was going with the underdog, and then, nope, not doing it. Well, here, close fight again. I am tempted to go Rob Font. Keep in mind, this is exactly how I started the Bissett Barzola one. But I don't think I'm going to. I think Jed, me and him, are on one side or on the mainland, and Wes is, I don't know, on Vancouver Island or the Hawaii, or I don't know. He's some island all isolated by himself, and that's good.
You're just copying my picks. That's what it is. Nick knew I won last week.
Well, I mean, I usually copy Wes's. So
I'm being a risk taker, guys.
I usually copy Wes's.
You just took your first underdog, who's barely an underdog. He's even at most books.
Well,
yeah.
We took Dustin Ortiz,
a lot of fact
an underdog.
They're all pretty even.
I mean, we took Dustin Ortiz, who's at least an actual underdog.
Yeah. So just for later on, do we let Wes go Rob Font as underdog pick of the week, or is that a no?
Oh, it'll count. I'm gonna count.
Okay. All right. Well, here I'm going Tommy Almeida, like you, Jed. And the way I look at this matchup is, it's not going to the ground. I mean, it's great that you brought it up, but there's no way this is going to the ground. I'd be shocked. So I think this is going to be a stand-up war for however long it lasts. I think it'll last a while. I don't think it'll go all 15 minutes. I think Almeida will be able to stop Font probably in the third round with strikes. And this is a very interesting matchup because Rob Font is a lot more technical. He's a calculated fighter. He doesn't necessarily have the killer instinct to knock out, or not to knock out, but to perform well against such a ferocious guy in Thomas Almeida. And if Rob Font's able to use his jab very well, he could pick apart Almeida because he's probably the more technical striker of the two. But Almeida is just so mean. He comes forward, he looks to bang, he throws with bad intentions with every shot, and Font isn't exactly that fighter. Does he have knockout power? Absolutely. Does he throw punches with knockout power in every punch? No. And he has historically had issues with pressure fighters. We look back to the John Lineker fight. John Lineker just kept coming forward, and Rob Font didn't really have an answer for it. It looked impressive at the time. I mean, that was a guy who he took Lineker to the distance. Not many people were doing that at the time. But I think it's sort of shown that Font, if you pressure Font, that's the best way of defeating him, especially if you're another stand-up fighter, because Font is a striker himself. And so I was tempted to pick Font. I was sort of just thinking, oh, this guy hits hard too. He's more technical maybe. But Almeida's just going to keep coming forward. He might have issues early because his chin isn't great, I don't think. He is very hittable. His defense needs a lot of work. And I don't know if it's gotten much better since we first saw him a few years back, but I think he's going to stalk Rob Font and put the wood to him. And Font will hang tough for a while, but it's going to be just too much. He's going to overwhelm Rob Font. And I like the Brazilian by TKO in round number 3. We move on to what might just be the worst fight on the card stylistically. Jean Vellante, Francimar Barros in the light heavyweight division. Barros has never been known as an action fighter. Jean Vellante has been known to crap the bed in many, many fights, and this is also at light heavyweight. Both guys are going to be tired, unless it's a quick knockout, but who knows? Close fight, so I guess that's the one intriguing part. It's kind of close on paper. Jed, Barros or Vellante?
Dude, I don't know. And do any of us care? Realistically,
No.
None of us are even going to be watching, because at the same time that this fight is going on, that's around the time you'll be getting Roy McDonald versus Douglas Lima. We'll talk about that fight later. There's a 0% chance I'm going to end up watching this fight live. I guess I might go back and watch it later, because maybe Jean Vellante gets a fun knockout. But this fight sucks. Nobody cares. Nobody cares about either of these dudes in general. My breakdown is going to be purely this. Jean Vellante is a little bit better of a fighter than Francimar Barros. I think Francimar Barros has more tools in his game in general, but for all Jean Vellante's many flaws, he can defend takedowns very well. Francimar Barros is going to want to wrestle. He's not a great wrestler. He's going to be stuck on the feet, and power, volume, and just capability all favor Jean Vellante here. Francimar Barros is a pretty tough dude. I don't know that Vellante gets a knockout here, but he's a banger. I'm going to say Jean Vellante gets a TKO in the 3rd round. I have no confidence in that pick, and I don't care.
Yeah, I don't want to talk too much about this one, but I did a little digging just for statistics. I'll say this. In 8 fights, Francimar Barros has looked for 70 takedowns. That's averaging between 8 and 9 a fight and 3 to 5 per round, which is pretty ridiculous. This fight, in my opinion, is one of the worst fights I've ever seen on a pay-per-view in recent memory. I can't think of one that's been this awful. I've never seen Barroso in a great fight ever. In his whole mixed martial arts career, there's never been a moment that I've seen him land a punch where I got excited. He's just not that fun of a guy to watch. Jean Vellante can be sometimes if he can land that volume like he does occasionally, like we've seen in some of his previous fights. And I've been tempted to pick Vellante, but seeing that he only has 2 victories in the past few years. He did get a victory over Corey Anderson back in the day, which I guess was good, but Anderson was winning that one. Anderson has a testy chin. I'm really tempted just to switch it up and go Barroso, because I think that there could be a chance where Vellante, of course, is the guy that wants to look for those combination shots. But if Barroso continuously presses forward like he always does, looks for those average 8 to 9 takedowns a fight and 3 to 5 a round, then he might be able to take them, just because there's absolutely zero activity and no chance for Vellante to land anything at all during the fight and for anything to go in his favor. Kind of like what happened in the fight when he fought Patrick Cummins. Patrick was just able to pressure him up against the cage, land like 1 takedown in the fight, got a decision victory. Barroso could very well do the same thing. I'll make it fun. I'm going to go Barroso. I'm just going to switch it up completely. I was really tempted to go Vellante, but I think that when it comes to their game plan, if Barroso is able to do his boring style, that I don't have no other better way of putting it, he can really just be able to minimize the danger of getting striked by Vellante and just win a very boring decision. And for that reason, I think Barroso might have a good chance, but who knows? If Vellante is able to kind of circle out and go back to the middle of the cage, land that volume like Jed talked about, he can get a victory. But for the fun of it, I think Barroso, who knows? Maybe he's going to be able to get a victory here by being as boring as he always is.
Can someone answer me a question about Jean Vellante? Why has he not fought Steve Bosse?
It has been scheduled in the past.
Yeah, that fight is Steve. I don't know if Steve Bosse is still fighting.
Bosse is actually going to boxing.
Is he?
Yeah.
Well, that's dumb, but we should just make that happen. That's the only fight I would ever give a shit about seeing Jean Vellante in.
I'm trying to remember. I think that might have. No, it was Vellante Cummins at the McGregor Alvarez card. Yeah. Let me just look up Vellante on Topology, because I know that fight has been scheduled at one point or another. Let's
I
see
don't know.
here.
I don't think it was.
You know
To be
what?
honest.
I don't
Yeah,
think it should have been scheduled.
I guess not.
Because
There's
Bosse
another.
was
Maybe I'm
supposed
just
to fight
thinking of
Cannonier.
Volante comment because that was supposed to happen a while ago.
I don't know, but Jean Volante is basically Steve Bosse, so why don't they just fight each other? Because that would be actually a fun fight as opposed to this dog shit we're gonna have to watch.
So Wes, are you? What was your final pick? You had a lot of go back and forth. Are you going Bahos just for
decision in
fun?
the
I was gonna give Volante, but I'm going Bahos because Bahos can win this in a very, very boring fight.
Wes has picked back-to-back underdogs, and once again we have dissension. Nicholas, arbitrate.
This time, Jed, you're on the island. I am picking Francimar Bahos for the first time ever. I have never picked Francimar Bahos to win a fight.
Ever. Same here.
And this is the first time. I kind of hate to do it because it's a trend that has worked quite well. Or not a trend, but it's just a rule I followed, and it's worked out for the most part, the majority of the time. But I just can't pick John Vellante. I think this is it's not a great matchup for either fighter because it really comes down to where the fight takes place, who dictates the pace, sort of thing. If it's on the feet, Vellante is piecing Bahos up. If it's on the mat, Bahos is grinding out Vellante on top and making it boring. And even if it's on the feet, I mean, Bahos could do something and not get a knockout, but still make it boring. There's that potential. If it's on the feet for the whole time, it's not a guarantee that Vellante knocks him out. It seems likely, but Vellante, just count on him to not win when he should. That's sort of my feeling with this one. Now that you mentioned the Bosse fight, I really wish that was the one because that would actually be a fun fight. But Bosse is off to boxing. I'm gonna go Bahos. Again, I think he's actually. Can I even say he's more technical? I mean, he's slightly less bad than John Vellante, I think is maybe the best way to put it. He just seems to have a slightly better all-around game. He has better cardio. He isn't known as much for losing fights he should win. This is sort of fade both, but you have to pick one. So I'll go Bahos in a super, super boring fight. We move on to the featherweight division, and this is actually another fun one. Calvin Kattar taking on Shane Hurricane Burgos at 145 pounds. Jed, do you like Kattar or Burgos?
I'm taking Shane Burgos. He's huge for the division. He's easily supposed to be a lightweight. I mean, shit, maybe by the end of his round he'll be up at 170. This is a dude he's a big boy, big thick boy for the division. Calvin Kattar not a small man either though. He's gonna give up a little bit in the reach. I think he's also just giving up a little bit in the athleticism in the power category. I've talked a lot about athleticism on this card, and I don't know, sort of just feels like that's the make or break for a lot of these fights this weekend. I think Calvin Kattar will have success early. I think he might be even a little bit more technical with his whole all-around game or whatever. He mixes in his wrestling very well. He's pretty consistent with it. He keeps good pace on the feet and fairly solid striking. I think Shane Burgos just has a little more power, a little more dynamism, a little more finishing ability here. And eventually that's going to kind of change the course of the fight. So I won't be surprised if Kattar is winning early and then starts to slow a little bit as Burgos lands the bigger shots, more damaging shots, and then kind of takes over late. So I'm going to take Shane Burgos by decision. I think that he's just got the tools in every facet, and he's a guy to watch at featherweight. I mean, he's not anywhere near surging to the top of the ranks, but this is a guy who could start piecing together, chipping up, and just slowly working himself into a top 10-ish kind of featherweight as the division sort of shifts around him. So give me Shane Burgos by decision.
I like this fight quite a bit. I think
actually, you know what? I'm going to do Shane Burgos by a TKO in the third round.
I do like that pick. I'm really looking forward to this one. I think it's a pretty solid fight between two guys who are making strides in the division. I feel like they're still pretty young and still have a lot to show, but I do think that they could definitely make some moves. I think that whoever takes a loss in this one can definitely build a lot off it and could maybe come back stronger from it. and I don't think it'll put them too far down because I think they're both pretty athletic guys. Qatar only has a couple losses on his record. Burgos is still undefeated. I did do quite a bit of film study on this one, but because we've been running for a while, I'll kind of keep it short. Qatar's game relies quite a bit on counter shots. He shows a lot of patience with the striking attack. There's a left jab that he likes to land pretty frequently, and he feints it occasionally to set up like overhand rights, and then likes to press forward sometimes. Sometimes he'll also switch to southpaw, and as soon as he does it, make sure you watch it when it happens. He'll always land like one inside leg kick or maybe two, and then he'll immediately switch back to orthodox. Doesn't really stay true to it too much. But that's one thing that I kind of picked up on watching Qatar's game. But he's pretty hesitant with opponents that like to show aggression. I think Burgos is the guy that likes to show aggressive, like an aggressive style in his fights. He's very patient as well, but he throws a little bit more volume, I think, at different occasions. Looks a lot for left jabs, mixes it up well to the body and also to the head. I think the body shots are pretty important too in a fight like this against a guy who likes to strike. But I think Burgos is just a little bit more competent of a fighter. I think that he has shown a little bit more of an impressive style in my eyes than Calvin Qatar. And nothing away from Qatar whenever Andre Fili is pretty good and all, but I do think that Burgos and his wins that he's had over guys like Alfredo Pepe and some of his other recent fights has shown just to be pretty truly impressive. Almost knocked out Pepe in the first round there in their fight. I think Burgos is just a really technical fighter. I think that he's going to show a little bit more aggression than Qatar, and if he can avoid those counter shots that Qatar could land, Burgos is definitely going to be able to get the job done. I'm taking Burgos by decision. I like Jed's pick by TKO, but I think just a likely outcome, just seeing that Qatar's never been stopped before by strikes, and Burgos has never been stopped ever, that this could definitely go to a decision. So Burgos is my pick.
I'm pretty high on both guys. I can't say I'm super high on Kattar just because I picked Andre Fili against him. He was a sizable underdog, and I didn't expect him to come through in flying colors, 30-27 decision. That was really impressive. But that fight showed a lot. Like, the guy is super technical on the feet. He's very composed. He didn't let him octagon jitters get in the way of that performance. And he just shut down a fairly top talent in Andre Fili, who, in case we don't remember, he was coming off a layoff, that's Fili, but he was also coming off the biggest win of his career, that Hacran Diaz win. And so it seemed like Fili was on sort of finally fulfilling his potential or at the level where we expected finally. But once again, he fell short. Shane Burgos, on the other hand, has impressed me so much in the UFC. The guy has great footwork. His defense needs some work. He has an interesting style in that he's very flashy. He doesn't give his opponents respect. And this is a guy that, he's pretty good on the microphone. He's a good interview. He has charisma. I think this guy, as long as he keeps putting the wins together, could be, I'm not going to say he's going to be a huge star, but I think he has that potential. I think he has the skills to do it. And I think people enjoy his style and his fights. And so basically, here he's the bigger guy, as Jed talked about. He has a 3-inch reach advantage. The height, somewhat surprisingly, is dead even. But I think he's going to be able to pick apart Qatar on the feet. He hits harder. He's slightly more dynamic. He might not be as technical. Kattar is a very good striker. He seems underrated just in general. Like, the guy is 17-2. Like, this is a great fight. 17-2 versus 10-0. Both coming up from the New England area, I think. Both are really top talents in the featherweight division. So it's going to be fun. But I think Burgos will sort of be one step ahead the entire time. Just hits a bit harder. As I said, more dynamic. And he has that aggression that I think Kattar doesn't have. He comes forward, sometimes with his hands down. And so Shane Burgos is a risky fighter in the sense that he doesn't fight the typical have your hands up, chin tucked. He goes out there throwing bombs, especially closer to the end of the fights, but he's exciting. And that's why I think he has some potential to go places. So I'm going Shane Burgos here. I don't think he stops Kattar. I think it'll be a relatively competitive fight, but I think Burgos clearly takes the decision. Probably 29-28 at the very worst. Wouldn't shock me to see a 30-27 in there. But I think the rounds will be pretty close. But I think Burgos, as I said, one step ahead. So Burgos, Hurricane. I messed it up, but Hurricane, Shane, Burgos by unanimous decision. Now we move on to the first of two title fights. This one taking place in the light heavyweight division. Daniel DC Cormier, the champion, taking on number 2 light heavyweight Volkan No Time Ozdemir. Pretty interesting matchup. Light heavyweight title is on the line. Wes, we'll go to you first. Does Daniel Cormier retain the championship, or does Volkan Ozdemir make it 4-0 in the UFC and become UFC champion less than a year after his short notice debut in Houston?
And I think that Volkan Ozdemir has a chance, but I really feel like his only chance is going to come in the first round. Cormier has never really shown a lot of susceptibility to getting getting a lot of damage up against him. I know Gustafsson was able to get a little bit there in their fight. He did get knocked out by John Jones in the last fight. But then again, it took a whole head kick, and Gustafsson's a really talented athlete. I think that as this fight goes on, it's going to favor Daniel Cormier. Also, we're going to have to see how Cormier looks at the weigh-ins. I really hope he can make weight.
He told Ariel Helwani of MMA Fighting earlier, I think at Media Day, that his weight cut apparently is going really good. I think noticeable because Ariel brought it up himself, saying like DC looks good. So I think he'll probably be okay in that regard, but you never know.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. I guess you never do know. I mean,
he's working with Tyler Minton now too, who works with George Lockhart, and he's underrated, and he's a good nutritionist.
I just know Khabib said that his weight cut was going good against Ferguson the one time. I guess we don't know, but I hope Cormier's weight cut's going good. It sounds like it is. I really think that this fight is going to favor him in the later rounds to fight. And the reason I'm saying that is because I look at Volkan Ozdemir's last fight that went to a decision victory, and that was against Ovince St. Preux. And Ovince St. Preux has evolved quite a bit as a mixed martial artist. I actually love this guy. He's one of my favorite light heavyweights. But everybody knows OSP shown tremendous holes in his cardio. I thought OSP kind of took the last 2 rounds there against Volkan Ozdemir, and I thought Ozdemir was just slowing down. He showed a lot of volume there in the opening round, and it wasn't like Ozdemir showed signs of cardio fail. It was just kind of his combinations stopped. It was kind of like he was just pacing himself way too much, and just nothing was really there. And maybe it could have been signs of cardio, but I just felt like Ozdemir just didn't really show a lot of initiative there in the later 2 rounds. And I wonder how that's going to come into play against a guy like Daniel Cormier, who shows pretty consistent pressure. We saw a lot of pressure there in the John Jones fight against Rumble in both fights, despite getting rocked twice. In both of the Rumble fights, he was able to go down and take Rumble to the mat and choke him out there. Ozdemir, of course, did lose a fight to Kelly Anderson back in the day, back in Bellator, and that was by submission. I just think that Cormier is a really talented mixed martial artist. And I know he's getting up there in age, but he still shows pretty impressive, not only just durability, but a pretty good heart there in the fights too. He's always there in the game trying to be able to recover in times that he gets in trouble. Even when John Jones took him down, Cormier was just trying to hang on as much as he could. Rumble broke his nose, and he was still able to get him down. Anderson Silva hurt him with a body kick, and he still was trying his best to get the victory there. Cormier shows a lot of heart in his fights. And his wrestling game is just superior. I know Volkan Ozdemir, I think he was taken down a couple times when he fought OSP. I could be mistaken in that one. I'm just checking. Looks like I'm incorrect on that statement, but I feel like Cormier could be the guy to get Ozdemir down. And I feel like it's going to favor him as we get later on into the fight. For those kind of reasons alone, I'm leaning Daniel Cormier just to not really elongate this conversation in my pick and let both Jed and Nick get a chance to talk. But I think that Cormier is just the better athlete. Ozdemir could very well get a knockout victory here, but I think his best chance to get a finish is going to come in the first round. I'm going to take Daniel Cormier by either a 3rd or 4th round submission. I think that maybe his wrestling game will come into play And if he does become the first guy to get Ozdemir down in the UFC, I think Cormier is going to expose some holes in Volkan's game because we've never really seen a whole lot of Ozdemir in those positions. And Cormier is pretty superior when it gets down in those exchanges. So give me Daniel Cormier. I'm going to take him by submission. We'll get third round over Volkan Ozdemir to be, and still, the UFC light heavyweight champion.
In a world without John Jones, Daniel Cormier is the greatest light heavyweight of all time and one of the 5 best fighters of all time. That's just it. Like, this is very simple. This is one of the best guys who's ever competed in mixed martial arts, and the only thing keeping everyone from talking about how fucking good he is at all points in time is that he happens to have the misfortune of competing in the same division at the same time as probably the best pure fighter we have ever seen in the sport. You don't want to call. I don't have John Jones as my greatest of all time based on accomplishment, but as far as who could beat up anybody, John Jones is the best pure fighter we've probably ever seen in this sport, and that's just it. Like, and Daniel Cormier is not that many steps beneath him on that ladder. Volkan Ozdemir is closer to me on that ladder than he is to Daniel Cormier. Like, that is just, Volkan Ozdemir is a good guy. He's an okay fighter. He's a guy who has put together a good run and riding that to a title shot. Fair play to him. If he wins, the only way Volkan Ozdemir wins this fight, I feel extremely confident saying that, is if Daniel Cormier is done. Is if the head kick to John Jones cracked his chin permanently and Volkan can land it. Even then, even if that's true, I don't know that Daniel Cormier loses this fight. I think if DC wanted to spend 5 rounds boxing with Volkan Ozdemir, he could very credibly win that fight. He does not have to wrestle to win here. I think that he could win here if he chose not to wrestle. But it's just, he can wrestle and he's going to wrestle. Like, even look at Volkan Ozdemir's wins, like the impressive wins. He got a guy backed up against the cage and cracked him right behind the ear in that fleshy part. And then he just backed up Jimmy Manuwa. Daniel Cormier doesn't take steps back. He's the one putting the pressure on. He is the one who knocks, and he is going to knock the shit out of Volkan Ozdemir up and down and around that cage. He's going to pick him up and dump him on his head if he wants. He's going to ground and pound him. He can do anything he wants in this fight. I think Daniel Cormier is motivated in this fight. He wants to put a stamp on it because of the way he sort of lost his belt and then got it back. So I think he's coming out here to make a statement. He can't help it. If John Jones is out forever, he doesn't ever get to fight him again because he's going to retire very soon. But he can come out, win this fight, rematch Gustafsson, try and win that fight, and then maybe take a fight with Jimmy Manuwa or something, and then retire. And I think he wants to retire with statements. I think that's his sort of plan here, and he's going to come out and fuck up Volkan Ozdemir in a vicious and expedited way. Give me Daniel Cormier with a second-round TKO victory.
I got to complete the hat trick. Give me the champion, Daniel DC Cormier, to retain the light heavyweight championship over Volkan No Time Ozdemir. When this fight was first announced, I was very tempted to pick Ozdemir simply based off the fact that there's a good chance Cormier's done. But the thing is that it's a gutsy pick because, as Jed said, I agree with the fact that the only way Volkan Ozdemir wins this fight is if DC is absolutely done, is if John Jones permanently made DC's chin terrible and Ozdemir goes in there and knocks him out, just like 2 of his 3 opponents that we all picked him again or picked against him. I mean, you guys, sort of hit the nail on the head. Daniel Cormier. I actually agree with the fact that DC could stand with Ozdemir. I don't think it's going to be his preferred area in this fight. I think if he can, he's going to get the takedowns and start pounding on Ozdemir from top control. But if he has to stand, like if Ozdemir is able to defend a takedown here and there and he's on the feet, I think Cormier can have some success. I think Ozdemir... The thing is, we look at Ozdemir and say, oh, he has a striking advantage. But the reason we think that at first is because Ozdemir, we haven't seen anything else. We don't know what his submission game is like. It's probably not fantastic. We don't know what his wrestling is like. It's probably not fantastic, although that's just speculation because we haven't seen it. And so we think because Ozdemir, the only thing he's great at is striking or pretty good at is striking, we think he has the advantage in that. But he honestly doesn't. He has knockout power, and we really haven't seen much else. and so he could crack DC. It'd be incredible, really, if Volkan Ozdemir goes out there and starches Daniel Cormier, simply because Ozdemir, like this is the fourth time I've picked against Ozdemir, probably like you guys, and that would make it 4-0 in the UFC for him. So
if Volkan Ozdemir goes out here and starches Daniel Cormier, let's just shut down the division. John Jones is forced into retirement because we're done with light heavyweight and heavyweight for that matter. We're done.
Yeah.
Middleweight and down, that's all we're fighting.
So I'm going DC. I think he's able to make it close on the feet, but it's not going to be close whatsoever on the ground, I don't think. He's able to get on top of Ozdemir at will. He's the thicker guy. I know Ozdemir actually has a reach advantage. He's a bit taller than DC, but Cormier is super strong. We all know it. And I think this is going to look kind of like the Rumble fight or Rumble fights, because they're kind of the same fight, basically, other than Rumble trying to wrestle him in the rematch last April. The only difference is that I don't think Ozdemir will give up as much as Rumble did. I don't think it'll be like takedown, get on the back, choke out, done. But like Ozdemir is going to try and try really hard. He wants it too, but I think Cormier is just going to overwhelm him. I don't think he stops Ozdemir. I think Ozdemir hangs in there for 25 minutes, maybe gutsy there, but I'm going DC by dominant decision, probably 49-46, maybe even 50-45. We move on to the main event of the evening. The UFC Heavyweight Championship is on the line. Stipe Miocic taking on Francis the Predator Ngannou. US versus Cameroon. Of course, this is an interesting matchup because of their backgrounds. I mean, not only is Miocic a firefighter, he's the best heavyweight on the planet, or as far as rankings go, he's also, his parents are from Croatia. And I saw a tweet sort of talking about how this represents the American dream, and it's a cool way of looking at it. This fight is so much more than just who's the baddest man on the planet, and that's why I think so many people are intrigued by it, and the fact that Ngannou is a murderer and Miocic is a fantastic fighter himself. Jed, we'll start with you. Who picks up the heavyweight title? Who walks away? TD Garden in Boston, Massachusetts, Sunday morning. Who flies out of the city UFC heavyweight champion? Is it Miocic or is it the Predator, Francis Ngannou?
We talked about this on the MMA Circus. I think Francis Ngannou wins the title. I think he puts together a run that will end up classifying him as the greatest heavyweight fighter of all time. It's weird to say that because we still know very little about Francis Ngannou, but what we know is excellent. And also what we know is extremely well matched against Stipe Miocic. Like, it's just, I'm a little bit scared that I perennially underrate Stipe Miocic, and that is playing into my thought process here. But the reality is, Stipe has been hit hard and kind of hurt by all of the guys he's fought the last 5 times. And Alistair Overeem probably should have beat him. Like, he went for that guillotine, and then Miocic ended up obviously pulling through. He didn't tap. That was nonsense. And then came back and hurt him. But if instead of going for the guillotine, Alistair just pounds away, not unreasonable to think that he ends up getting the stoppage here. Francis Ngannou is not going to punch Stipe Miocic in the face and then try and tap him out. He's just going to go straight ape shit on him and fuck him up. It's going to be awesome. I think Stipe is being undervalued for whatever that's worth. This is a guy who is the justified, deserving champion who's beaten everybody basically that's been put in front of him and proved time in and time out. I just don't know what he does here. If he comes forward and presses Ngannou, that plays into Ngannou's hands. Ngannou is a natural counter striker. He's really good at it already, despite being so young in the game. He's very patient. He waits for openings. He doesn't throw too much. He sort of knows what he's doing, and he lands the big shots that matter. The way to beat him is either going to just be take him down and grind him out, and I don't know that that's even possible. We haven't seen a ton of his defensive wrestling. I imagine it's fairly good, though. And it's not like Stipe is a great offensive wrestler either. But I think the way I would want to approach him is try and counter his counters, lead when he comes back, try and lead with a feint. When he comes back, try and come back over the top of that. But I have no idea if that's even going to work, because it doesn't matter. He might just end up hauling off an uppercut from the depths of Hades and blow Stipe Miocic's head off. we're dealing with a different kind of athlete, a guy who, for all intents and purposes, looks like this was what he was born to do. If Stipe Miocic is just a tough bastard who comes out here, takes the best shot that Ngannou's got, walks through it, takes him down, grinds him out, I won't be super surprised, but I think this is a really bad style matchup for Stipe anyway. I think he's leading is not good for him. I think if he tries to play a counter game, I don't think that's going to end up well for him. I don't see what he's going to do here realistically outside of maybe cracking Ngannou with something. I just don't think it's going to happen. I think we're looking at Ngannou and probably a big fat star for the UFC now, because I think Francis Ngannou really does have the potential to be an awesome star. He's a cool dude. He's a captivating dude. He's a captivating fighter, and I think he's probably the best heavyweight on the planet right now. So give me Francis Ngannou, first round KO.
I've always been a pretty big fan of Stipe Miocic, but I really have a hard time picking him in this one. And I feel like it's a lot of the facts that we've seen Miocic take quite a bit of damage in some of his last fights, despite being able to defend the title. And Stipe has been able to pull through, which is fantastic. And he's shown time and time again that people keep counting him out in fights that people don't think are going to go in his favor, but he's able to come out there and get the job done. But a couple things that I just kind of worry about with Stipe, the first thing has always been his head movement. He's never really had good head movement. He's never been able to defend punches well. And sometimes it concerns me. He fights really kind of just a little bit too stiff. We saw it when he fought Alistair Overeem. He was really, really tense and stiff just in his posture when he got dropped. And Overeem almost got the guillotine choke, but didn't. Miocic was able to escape. And Miocic got the takedown and got the victory in that one. That's a concern. Another concern is when it comes to Miocic looking for takedowns. I know Ngannou, back when he fought like Curtis Blades was getting some good takedowns in there, landing some good ground and pound, but pretty much an eye injury hurt him in that one. That was the only fight I ever picked against Ngannou because I thought if he implemented a wrestling game, I didn't know too much about Ngannou's takedown defense, then maybe Blades could do something. Didn't really do a whole lot. I mean, he looked all right, but not great. Blades is an okay fighter. But I don't know if Stipe is going to be able to get this one down. And let's say he does, I don't know how he's going to be able to keep him down. I know Stipe is really good when it comes to his control on top, but when you think about Ngannou, his athleticism, and also his power and his strength, it's something that I don't know if Stipe is going to be able to hold him down, because I feel like Ngannou is the kind of guy that just carries so much muscle that he's going to be able to muscle his way up and get out of positions that put him in danger of getting finished. And he's going to be able to stand up quick if Stipe is able to get him down. Also, I think about Stipe when it comes to the clinch. I feel like if Miocic runs in there to the clinch, Ngannou's just going to be able to take him and reverse him and put him against the cage, just like he did when Alistair Overeem fought Francis Ngannou the last fight. Alistair was the first person to engage some kind of clinch battle, but all Ngannou did, as soon as it happened, he rotated him around, pretty much held him there against the cage, landed a couple strikes, they separated, and Ngannou, with his counter strike, was able to get a brutal knockout victory. Of course, one of the best knockouts in pretty much mixed martial arts history, especially in the UFC. And I feel like when it comes to picking a fight between a guy who doesn't really have any head movement or doesn't utilize it well, and a guy that Miocic, let's say he's only landed one takedown, I guess, in the past 4 fights, even though they've all ended in the first round, he's only landed one, and he hasn't really looked for any. When he lacks head movement like that and likes to stand and trade, going up against a counter striker who literally has the record for the heaviest punch ever landed, it's hard to not pick the guy when it comes to heavyweight, where power plays such more of an impact than sometimes skill does. And I know that kind of sounds a little silly saying that, but knockouts are always unpredictable at heavyweight. No matter who you are, no matter who you're matched up against, there's always a chance that you could get knocked out just because of the sheer power that people carry. For those reasons, I'm taking Francis Ngannou as well, and to knock out Stipe Miocic maybe in the first round. But if Stipe can override that, maybe get a takedown later in the fight, if somehow it gets there, maybe he can get the victory. But I think that Ngannou is going to be able to muscle his way out of positions like that if Miocic ever gets him down. And I think Ngannou is going to be able to just land the shot that puts Miocic out, similar to what Stefan Struve did, because if Stefan Struve can knock out Stipe Miocic, I'm sure as hell Francis Ngannou can. I'll take Ngannou to become Anu over Stipe Miocic, but I am a big Stipe Miocic fan. I would love to see him get the job done. Ngannou, though, as Jed mentioned, is really captivating as a person. Really cool backstory. Hard not to get behind a guy like that. And I do like him. He's really impressed me recently with his attitude and his persona. I think he's a really cool guy. So I like this fight. Really looking forward to it. But I think Ngannou's going to get it done.
Jed, just out of curiosity, real quick before I give my pick, is the only fight we differed on Bahos versus Vellante? Me and you, I mean?
Yes.
Okay. So for us, it comes down to that fight. For Wes and us, us, it will come down to, because Wes was on the island on his own a few times, but I'm completing the hat trick yet again. We are all in agreement for the 2 title fights. I'm picking Francis Ngannou here by knockout in round number 1, and I'm not going to go too in depth because we've heard it time and time again. I mean, the thing is, Francis Ngannou is just a big, scary guy. I don't care about the whole, he hits harder than some truck that is going 100 mile an hour, whatever the hell Dana White said. That's obviously not true. But nonetheless, Francis Ngannou probably hits harder than just about anybody in the UFC. The guy is one scary person. And I mean, we all know that if Miocic is going to win, it has to be with takedowns. He needs to get Ngannou down and grind him out, but I don't see that happening. Ngannou's the bigger guy. He is so athletic. He is so strong. Miocic, as good of a wrestler he is, I don't see him being able to get a hold of Ngannou and with a single leg or double leg and putting him on his butt and grinding him out and doing well on top. I just don't know how possible that really is. Have we ever seen Ngannou off his back? Yeah, very rarely. I think maybe once in his debut, but in general, we don't know much about Ngannou's game on the ground. In general, we don't know tons about Ngannou because a lot of his fights are really quite quickly. Not as quick as Osmir's, but that's another story. I just like Ngannou here because I think his striking capabilities are slightly higher than Miocic's. In general, I don't think Stipe gets the respect he deserves because does he look like the baddest man on the planet? No, not really. Is he a hell of a good fighter? Absolutely. I mean, the guy is super good. He's very, very talented on the feet, on the ground. I mean, the thing is, why people are picking Miocic here is he's more well-rounded than Ngannou. I think Miocic has a bigger advantage on the ground than Ngannou does on the feet, and so some people are going Stipe. But I don't think this comes down to can Miocic take Ngannou down, who's the better striker, who hits harder, who does this, I think this just simply comes down to kind of who lands the first shot, and I think Miocic's chin is slightly worse than Ngannou's. Can Miocic knock Ngannou out? Probably. Has Ngannou ever been knocked out? My gut feeling is that he has a very good chin. So I'd be kind of shocked if Miocic just went in there and starts Ngannou. So to wrap this up, I like Francis Ngannou. I like him to land some huge shots and put Miocic down. I think it'll be a rather quick fight. I think he gets the job done within 5 minutes, that is, and becomes the new UFC heavyweight champion. All right, before we get to Bellator 192, which I suspect we will go through rather quickly because It is 20 minutes past midnight where you guys are, and it is 11:25 here in the PEG. But before that, we got to go through our bonuses and our underdog pick of the week in DraftKings. So we'll start with our bonuses, and we'll go to Wes first. Who do you like for fight of the night and your 2 performances of the night?
Man, I should have thought about this a little more because I didn't really think about it too much. I'm gonna get bonus wise. I'll go Francis Ngannou for definitely one. I feel like a main event is of course a lock. And I think I'm gonna go. I'll take a risk. Well, I wouldn't call it a risk. I'll take Daniel Cormier. I guess it's the second. I know it may not be an exciting finish if it gets one, but it would definitely be a really good performance if it gets one. You know what I mean? It's going to be an impressive win. Of course, he's defending the title and all, but I feel like his title doesn't scream like that was one of the greatest performances I've ever seen, but I think Cormier is going to look great in the fight no matter what. So I'll take him as my second performance.
Who was your first one?
Francis Ngannou.
Okay.
I understand if we're going to copy on some of these. I feel like it's definitely understandable. I'll give my fight of the night. Man, there's some good. I feel like Ortiz Pantoja could be a really good fight, but I'm gonna go Almeida Font. I feel like that. I'm really looking forward to that one. And also, Qatar Burgos is a great fight. I would say Volante Bajosa, but that's one of the worst fights I've ever seen on a pay-per-view in my entire life. Besides that, I guess my underdog pick. I picked 3 underdogs.
You picked 2.
I think
you picked 2 underdogs. Font and Bajosa.
Oh, those were the only 2. Okay. Then let's see. I think I'll go. Bajosa is a pretty big underdog, but I'm actually less confident on him
He's
getting
only
a
plus 140, according to that's not too big.
Bajosa is a much bigger underdog than Font, which is even at both places.
Yeah.
But man, I feel like a lot of people are more confident in Almeida beating Font than Volante beating Bose. Maybe I could be wrong. I'll take Font. I like Rob Font. I think he's a cool guy. Maybe he can get a pretty impressive victory. I feel like it would be a big underdog victory. I feel like a lot of people are counting him out, but he's a really good athlete. So Rob Font's my pick for that.
Okay, I thought we were going to be identical for a minute there. I took Ortiz Pantoja as my fight of the night. The other one I was considering was Almeida Font. My performances are the same, taking Ngannou and Cormier. Very obvious reasons. I'm very confident both of them show out tomorrow. My underdog pick, the one underdog I took on the card, I'm taking Dustin Ortiz to upset Alejandro Pantoja. So I'm taking him as my dude for underdog. Nikolai, what you got?
My my performances of the night will go to Francis Ngannou, and unlike you guys, I'm going Abdul Razak Al Hassan.
Okay.
My fight of the night will be Almeida Font, like Wes. I think number 2, very close. I would consider Cater versus Burgos, but how can you not go Almeida Font? Ortiz Pantoja is a close third, but I think Almeida Font and Cater Burgos would both actually be better than that one. Plus, it's on the prelims, and so usually main card fighters typically get bonuses. So those are my bonuses. My underdog pick of the week, and somewhat surprisingly, we all differ here. I would consider Dustin Ortiz, but I'm going to go with my new favorite fighter, Francis Bajosa.
I like it.
Why not?
I like it. What about our DraftKings team? What you got, Nick? Since you've already got the mic,
I will go to my DraftKings team first, I guess. This is an interesting one because I don't have a single fighter on my team over or at or over 9,000. So I'm taking.
Holy shit, you're going to lose.
But no, okay. I'm not. I am taking. Oh, hold on. How much does Ngannou cost?
I think 92.
Okay, so maybe I am taking one guy over 9,000. So
no, he's 89.
There you go. Okay, I was right. So my team is 5 favorites. None of them are huge ones, and then I got one underdog. So I'll start with the underdog. It's Dustin Ortiz. I suspect, Jed, you'll have him as well. I got Dustin Ortiz, Francis Ngannou, Brandon Davis, Shane Burgos, Julio Arce, and Tommy Almeida.
Okay, Wes, what about you?
My team, I guess I don't know. I'm not too confident.
It doesn't matter.
But my team consists of Matt Bissett, going a little how to make money fit a little bit. So I went Bissett maybe for an upset. Shane Burgos, Daniel DC Cormier for takedowns and finish. Islam Makhachev for takedowns and takedowns. I went Stipe Miocic because he was extremely cheap. Of course, I'm not picking him, but for $7,300, I feel like that was worth it because he definitely could get a victory. And I picked Alexander Pantoja because I'm not picking Dustin Ortiz, which I think that'll be a really close fight.
Well, boys, I gotta say I'm a big fan of my DraftKings team here. I am taking Francis Ngannou. I'm taking Daniel Cormier. Both of those are my fighter or performance bonus guys, so definitely on my squad. Taking Tommy Almeida. I think he's going to get a late stoppage. Dustin Ortiz, obviously, big underdog on my card. He's makes the money work a little bit. taking Barzola is the other guy. Barzola's the one flex spot because they were. I guess let me go back. So after Ortiz, I'm taking Gleison Tebow. We talked about it. I think it's a very close fight. I think it's very, very possible Gleison Tebow just shuts down all the takedowns of Islam Makhachev. And then I needed somebody that was a big dog because I've got some big favorites here. And then I'm taking Enrique Barzola. The Barzola one could have been anybody. I had $8,900 left to spend on one last fighter. I consider Jean Vellante. Al Hassan would have been my choice, but he is 9,000, so I just missed that. But yeah, give me Enrique Barzola. I feel fairly confident he controls the shit out of Bissett. So, probably gets a bunch of takedowns and a bunch of points.
Wes's team is sort of not really like ours at all, but we share 3. So we share Almeida, Ortiz, and Ngannou, and the differences are I have Arce, I have Burgos, I have Davis, you have DC, Barzola, and Tebow. So I like your DC pick, but I managed to not have a underdog I'm not picking. So I don't know. It's close.
I mean, it is. I assume that Gleison Tebow will be able to put some level of points on the board for me. Because if you go back and look at old Gleison Tebow, how many points did he put up when he got his ass lost to Habib Nurmagomedov? Wow, they don't even have the score for it. It was so long ago. Jeez, that's insane.
Okay, we should probably move on to Bellator.
Yeah, let's go.
Okay, Bellator 192 goes down the same evening, Saturday night, and it is going down at the Forum in Inglewood, California, which is basically Los Angeles. Strangely, we have Quinton Rampage Jackson versus Chael Sonnen as the first round matchup of the Bellator Heavyweight Grand Prix tournament. Of course, the main event was supposed to be Douglas Lima versus Rory McDonald for the welterweight championship in Bellator, but they did a little swap just a few days ago. Very interesting, very bizarre, very not so great in my opinion. It makes sense, but I'm not a fan of the switch so close to the card. But nonetheless, I'm not crying over it because, hey, I don't care what order the fights are happening. As long as one wasn't canceled, I'm happy. So actually a pretty deep Bellator card, if we're being honest, for Bellator standards, considering this is a free card, as long as you have the newly branded Paramount Network, this is a better card. Like you have to judge everything on a curve because UFC pay-per-view versus free Bellator card. I'm liking the Bellator card better, but so I think we'll just sort of go through the main card pretty quickly, and I don't see really much reason to talk about pretty much anyone on the prelim card, maybe one or two, but we'll start out with Aaron Pico versus Shane Crutchton. They kick off the Paramount Network 5-fight main card. We got Aaron Pico, who, of course, has tons and tons of accolades in wrestling, has some experience as a boxer as well. He's 21 years old, whereas Shane Crutchton is more of a veteran. And in 2 ways, he actually was in the military and he's a veteran mixed martial artist. He's been in the game for 12 years, whereas Pico made his debut last year. Got submitted by Zach Freeman, followed up with a knockout win over Justin Lin pretty recently. Highlight reel. Great finish in that one. And Crutchton has not fought since WSOF 34 back New Year's Eve 2016. That was the WSOF card at MSG. And so he's coming off a long layoff. This is his first Bellator fight. So pretty interesting one in the featherweight division. Pico, of course, a huge favorite, but we saw that against Zach Freeman too, and we know what happened. Jed, we'll start with you. Aaron Pico or Shane Crutchton?
I'm going to spend more time talking about your intro, which is I'm super glad they made the change. I don't have to watch. Well, I do because I'm actually doing coverage for that, but because they made the change, the Rory Lima fight will be taking place roughly around the same time as the middle part of the pay-per-view that no one gives a shit about. And then the two fights on the pay-per-view that most people give a shit about, they can watch that instead of watching Chael Rampage, which is going to be a dog shit fight. Oh, yeah, Aaron Pico is Aaron Pico. I don't need to give you any more explanation for that than this. I literally don't know a single thing about Shane Crutchton other than he's going to lose. Aaron Pico is the best MMA prospect we've had since Francis Ngannou. He's going to win, probably impressively.
Yeah, I don't really have too much else to add. To be honest, I know nothing about Shane Crutchton. I feel like I watched the fight with Jeremy Mahon because I definitely remember watching the New Year's Eve card in 2016, but I couldn't tell you how he won or how he looked in that fight. Aaron Pico's a great prospect. Freeman was able to get a victory over him, yeah, but Freeman's a pretty average, pretty good fighter. Pico's a pretty dynamic in his whole game. He shows some pretty impressive striking. He knows how to wrestle. He knows how to get it down to the ground. Give me Aaron Pico by I'll take a second round knockout.
Can't lie. I'm tempted to go with the underdog here.
As Jed would say, don't be a coward.
Yeah,
don't be a coward. Do it.
I don't know. I'm 0-2 picking Aaron Pico fights. I picked Pico just because I didn't know Zach Freeman at the time, and look what happened. And then I followed that up with picking against Pico, and look what happened. So I'm not very good at picking Pico fights thus far, but man, like this is my gut says Aaron Pico, but there's just something about Shane Crutchton that tells me that he's going to get the upset here. Because the thing is, I know more about Shane Crutchton than either of you do. As I said, he's been fighting for 12 years or so. Mostly, he came up in the California scene. I think he had a few fights for Gladiator Challenge. I know there's another local promotion. Its name escapes me at the time, but it's sort of fairly well known as a local promotion in California. So that's sort of where he's coming from. He had a couple fights for World Series of Fighting. Didn't get on either three of the PFL cards last year, so that's the reason for the layoff. He never asked for his release until just last month, and then that's when the Bellator fight came up.
No one cares.
I just want you guys to stay awake. This is fun. I have an hour to.
This isn't going to keep me awake. Talking about Shane Crutchton, that sure shit ain't doing it, homie.
Well, let's talk a little Aaron Pico. I mean, you know who Aaron Pico is. The guy's a tremendous wrestler. He's great on the feet.
You're taking him. Good. Let's move on.
I'm just going to go Shane Crutchton to have some fun. Give me Shane. Are you jotting these down? You should, yeah.
I'm writing them. Yeah, they count.
Okay, good. I'm going Shane Crutchton for the upset. He's plus 450, something like that. But the thing is, he's scrappy. He's not going to give Aaron Pico respect. He's going to go in there, and he's kind of similar to Zach Freeman. He's good on the ground. He's decent on the feet. I mean, Pico could knock him out. Won't be shocked, but let's have some fun. Let's go out on a limb. Give me Shane War Rhino Crutchton for the upset. We move on to the featherweight division. We got Henry Corrales taking on Georgie Karakhanyan. Wes, we'll start with you. Do you care about this fight? Personally, I think it's actually a fun matchup. Corrales versus Karakhanyan. Who do you like here? You are muted.
He likes his mute button.
Per usual. I've been watching. I'm a pretty big fan of both these guys. I've been following Karakhanyan for quite a bit. Henry Corrales ever since he pretty much started fighting in Bellator, and I knew he was pretty big. And I guess it was King of the Cage. Am I wrong? I don't know if that's right. He was big in one promotion. Okay.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. He fought a lot in that, and I know he was able to get a lot of victories in that. He looked really impressive. Was a big prospect coming into Bellator, but he lost 3 in a row. Showed pretty big signs in his takedown defense, but he worked quite a bit on it afterwards. And some of that showed when he fought Noad Lahat, who's a pretty offensively pressure forward, looking for takedowns kind of fighter, and he was able to defend most of those in that fight and got the victory. So I feel like if Corrales is able to keep this one on the feet, he'll definitely maybe have a shot. But Karakhanyan is a very, very good fighter on the feet. We've seen him get quite a bit of knockout victories in his mixed martial arts career. I'm going Karakhanyan in the end by a decision. I feel like it could be a pretty close fight, a pretty competitive fight, but I think that Karakhanyan is just a little bit more sound with the striking game than Corrales. I feel like he's just a little bit more dynamic. Corrales has made some improvements, but I feel like it's more in the wrestling areas than in the striking areas, despite getting a knockout victory there over Cody Bollinger as well. That was a pretty fun fight from what I remember. But I think Karakhanyan is going to be able to get the job done. I took him by a unanimous decision.
This is the most Bellator fight maybe of all time. You know, what Wes mentioned about Corrales coming into the organization and losing 3 in a row is true, but what he failed to mention is he came in and fought 3 extremely difficult matchups, one right after the other.
Oh, yeah.
I think a couple of them were even short notice replacement fights because, like, he fought Daniel Strauss, Emmanuel Sanchez, and Patricio Freire. 2 of those guys held belts, and one of those guys challenged for a Bellator belt, I believe, if I'm not mistaken.
Sanchez has not fought, but he should soon.
Did he not fight for a Bellator belt?
No.
Are we certain?
I'm pretty sure.
We're like 100% on that. You're
like
right.
99.9. Yep.
You're right. I'm genuinely shocked that he hasn't. Well, he should be fighting for
because he beat Strauss. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the win over Strauss should certainly put him. So he should be the next featherweight challenger. So there we go. So yeah, that's freaking Murderer's Row, and he lost, and he lost clearly in all of those fights. I know he took a split decision loss to Manuel Sanchez. I thought he lost the fight, but he hung in there fairly tough with a lot of guys making a big step up in competition. Some of the top guys in the thing. Georgie Karakanian is not a bad fighter by any stretch, but what I'm about to say will make you think that I think he's a bad fighter. He hasn't really done anything worth a damn shit other than submit and knock out Bubba Jenkins. I guess choking Lance Palmer is the big win of his career. He has a win over Dean Thomas that I didn't watch. It was in Legacy like 5 years ago or whatever. But Dean Thomas is not a great fighter anymore. What put him on the map was choking out Bubba Jenkins, who's a guy with a ton of hype. Then he lost to Daniel Whitehall and Pat Curran. So why I'm saying this is the most Bellator fight ever. These two guys are guys who are just right in that second tier of Bellator guys, hanging around trying to scrape their way together to get a title shot if they pick up enough wins. But really, outside of the Bubba Jenkins fight, he then came back and knocked him out in a pretty good KO, and then lost the decision to Sanchez, and then sort of beat Daniel Pineda, but he didn't. He lost to Daniel Pineda, and then he got a win because Pineda got cut and was bleeding too much. But Pineda had 2 rounds in the bank at that point in time already. So I'm not that sold on Georgie Karakanian. I won't be super surprised because, again, Henry Corrales is not like the best fighter. He's still sort of finding himself, figuring out where he is. But I just think that I think he's got a higher ceiling. I think Georgie Karakanian's been a little bit overblown the whole time. So we'll have dissension in the ranks. I will take Henry Corrales. Nick, I need you to decide who is right.
I just realized my screen is fuzzy again, but I'm not going to refresh because we're so close to the end. But I'm going to go Henry Corrales. I think Jed and I will be correct, or that's at least what I'm predicting. Wes is yet again on the island all by his lonesome. Close fight. I think Corrales, as you said, Jed, has a bit more upside to Georgie. Let's be honest. I mean, Georgie, other than his last win over Jenkins, he hasn't had a great win in a while. I guess the other Jenkins fight, which was 3 years ago.
He has 2 good wins. He has the choke of Lance Palmer, and then the first Bubba Jenkins win. The second win is less impressive because we know Bubba Jenkins isn't good anymore.
Sure. But other than that, in the past, his last 2 wins were against Daniel Pineda.
Yeah, that was a bullshit win.
And Kirill Medov something ski.
Yeah.
And so
I think he's Greek. I think he's a super Greek dude.
I mean, and those 2 wins mean nothing to me. I don't know either fighter. Karakanian's not a bad fighter. Corrales isn't a bad fighter. Neither is a great fighter. They're sort of both are a step behind, basically, behind the best Bellator featherweights, and that's Patricio Pitbull, Emmanuel Sanchez, Daniel Weichel, and I'll even throw Strauss in there as well.
I think he beat both of them.
Right, and I think you sort of from there go Karakanian and Corrales are sort of in the same boat. They're never going to beat those 4 guys, but they're going to beat most of the guys under them. So this sort of decides who's number 5, who's number 6, right around there. Corrales, he's just scrappier. He's tougher. I think he's a bit more well-rounded. He can score knockouts, and he's starting to win fights. I don't think I didn't expect him to beat Noad Lahat. I was quite surprised about that result. I don't know how that really went down because it was on tape delay. I didn't see it, but got the decision, so that's impressive just by itself. Again, he's done more that's impressed me as of late. So I'm going to go Henry Corrales. I'm going already too long, but Corrales is my pick, probably by unanimous decision. We move to lightweight division. Former Bellator champion Michael Chandler taking on up-and-comer, not really up-and-comer. He's 22-3. He's had 25 pro fights, but he's sort of at the peak of his career right now. It's Yamauchi. I'm just going to say that. Michael Chandler versus Yamauchi. Simple. Who do you like here, Jed?
Michael Chandler is your actual champion. I know that he doesn't have the belt. He's the champion. He's the best. He's the best fighter in that division, in that organization. He'll get the belt as soon as buddy, whose name is escaping me right now. I don't know why. There you go. Decides to pony up and fight him again. Actually, this is a sneak good fight. I like him.
Chandler, just for what it's worth, Chandler said today that she doesn't want to fight Primus.
Yeah, I know, but people say things all the time. He's full of shit. He wants to get the belt back, so whatever. I know he's talked to maybe he goes up to welterweight or whatever. And sure, but he wants to get the belt back. He'll take the Primus fight when the Primus fight gets offered. I actually like Miocic. I think he is a pretty good fighter. He's way out of his depth here, and if nothing else, Bubba Jenkins wrestle fucked him to death. Michael Chandler can super do that. I think Michael Chandler can also beat him on the feet. I think Michael Chandler wins this in a walk, basically any way he wants to. Michael Chandler with a third-round stoppage of some fashion.
Yeah, Michael Chandler is one of the best lightweights in the world. I really think he's one of the best there is. I think he could definitely contend for a UFC belt if he was ever in the UFC. He's that good. I think that Michael Chandler is pretty much better. Not really in the submission game, of course, because that's Cody's style, but Chandler's just a fantastic athlete. He is the real lightweight champion in my eyes. In Bellator as well. I think that just like as Jed mentions, as Bubba Jenkins did, as Will Martinez did, two guys who left to wrestle, they both got the job done. They were able to control him on the mat. Michael Chandler's way better than both of them, and is fantastic at controlling fighters on the mat, especially when it gets them down. I'm taking Michael Chandler to be the first guy to knock out Cody Yamauchi in the second round. To, I guess, get one step closer to getting back the belt he already should have,
Well, he shouldn't have because Primus beat him, but Jed's about to unmute his mic, I bet. Nope, guess not. All right. Well, I'm going Michael Chandler here. It's pretty simple fight in my opinion. Yamauchi, he's a good fighter. I was impressed with his submission win over Adam Piccolotti last time out. He has a good record, 22-3. You can't be a bad fighter and get that record. He's a legitimate fighter. He's on a 3-fight winning streak. He in the past 4 years, he's only lost once. That was to Bubba Jenkins. I think he's getting better too. He's still super young, which is incredible that he's had 25 fights only at the age of 25. Chandler, though, the guy is probably the best Bellator lightweight, even though Primus is the champion.
He's the best Bellator fighter ever.
I don't know about that, but that's fine. I think Douglas Lima might have something to say about that.
I love Douglas Lima. Michael Chandler is Bellator, for all intents and purposes.
Conor McGregor is UFC. Does that mean he's the best UFC fighter?
Yeah, didn't you know? That left though, homie.
All right, I'm going Chandler by knockout. I don't think Yamauchi will be able to take this to the ground. He needs to if he wants to win, but I don't think he'll be able to. So Michael Chandler will light him up on the feet and eventually get a knockout win, probably in the second round, maybe the third round. That is my prediction. Now we move on to what really should be the co-main event of the evening. It's
the best fight of the weekend.
The first round matchup of the Bellator Heavyweight Grand Prix tournament got Quinton Rampage Jackson, former UFC light heavyweight champion, returning to Bellator against none other than Chael Sonnen. Jed, Sonnen, the slight underdog here, or do you like Rampage to get back into the winning column?
I say this very seriously. If you're listening to this, I wholeheartedly endorse you taking as much money as you possibly can and putting it on Quinton Jackson. The fact that he is as little of a favorite as he is here is categorically insane. Whatever you think about what Quinton Jackson is as a fighter, a man, he is not a guy who can't defend takedowns. Chael Sonnen has no viable way to win this fight. He is forced to box with Quinton Jackson, and he is going to probably get knocked out. He's a tough dude. I have a great deal of respect for Chael Sonnen as an actual fighter. He can't take Rampage down, and he is going to lose a boxing match here. The only way Chael wins is if he is on all of the steroids and Quinton comes in super fat, super unmotivated. And even then, I'm still not sure it makes a difference. Quinton Jackson is going to knock Chael Sonnen out. I feel extraordinarily confident in it. I am shocked the line is as low as it is. I would recommend betting on it.
Do you have money on Rampage, out of curiosity?
Yes. As soon as I looked at the odds and saw that he was less than a minus 200 favorite. Because that is insane. He has always excelled at staying upright. That has always been arguably his very best skill. And Chael Sonnen, does anyone actually think Chael Sonnen is going to outbox Quentin Rampage Jackson over the course of 15 minutes?
Of course not.
Yeah, this is fucking insane to me. He could just take Chael down if he wants to. This is nuts. It's fucking nuts.
Yeah, I don't really have pretty much anything to add. I'm taking Rampage Jackson 2 in the end of this one. Only thing concerning, and the only thing that kind of made me think about ever picking Chael Sonnen was the fact that Quentin struggled so much when he fought Satoshi Ishii with trying to fend off takedowns, and Ishii looked awful, but somehow almost got the victory. And Rampage really didn't do much. But then again, I look at the King Mo fight, which is the most recent one, and he almost knocked out King Mo in the second round. And King Mo is a pretty decent fighter. He's not great, but he's not near terrible at all. He's solid in what he does. And Rampage had a couple moments in that fight. I'm taking Rampage. I think he knocks out Chael Sonnen. I like both of these guys. I think it's pretty cool that they share they don't hate each other. They're just kind of there to do their job and get out. Not going to be fun to watch. But would be pretty cool to see Rampage get the knockout, which is what I'm predicting. I'm thinking either first or second round, pretty similar to Jed.
Chael Sonnen got submitted by Tito Ortiz and sort of struggled with Vanderlei Silva. There's no chance he wins this fight. I just can't see it.
Yeah, I'm glad you pointed on that too, but I do agree with you. It's just not a good stylistic matchup.
I'm going Rampage for all the reasons you guys said. I don't care about this fight. I'm not looking forward to it. I don't think it's a good fight. I think it'll be kind of boring. But it's going to be a boxing match. I don't think Sonnen's able to get on top of Rampage. If he does, he wins. But if he's not going to, I don't think. And so I think Rampage will piece him up on the feet en route to a decision win. I don't think he will knock out Sonnen. I just don't see Rampage being active enough and throwing that heavy leather. So Rampage by decision is my official pick.
Real quick question for y'all. Just throw out an answer. Who do you think is going to win the Bellator heavyweight tournament since this is the start of it? Throw out your pick.
Oh, God.
Probably Matt Mitrione.
Oh, coward.
Hold on. I gotta pull it up. I can't think of it off the top of my head. Give me yours while you...
Oh, come on. I think we all should know the answer here. Ryan Bader.
Well, I think it comes down to the winner of Mitrione versus Bader.
I think Bader is going to cruise through this fucking thing.
Oh, hold on.
I don't think Mitrione beats Roy Nelson.
I do.
Oh no. I think
Roy Nelson throws a big right hand and knocks out Matt Mitrione.
Bader's gonna win the tournament. There's no question about it. I don't know why you wouldn't pick him.
Yeah,
he's the only other person with a chance.
The corpse of Fedor.
Don't say Fedor Emelianenko.
Oh, I'm not going to say Fedor. It's sad to say. I feel like the only guy with a chance could be King Mo. He's not that great. He's going to lose to Ron Bader in the very first fight. So, yeah.
That's something I don't like because King Mo could beat more than half of these guys, and he's going to lose in the first round.
Yeah, exactly.
I actually have no idea that King Mo could beat more than half these guys. King Mo got knocked out by Krokop. Everyone in this thing is washed as shit. Except for Ryan Bader. Ryan Bader's going to cruise.
Yeah. Pretty awful.
I still love it, though.
All right. Lima, let's finish this.
Main event time. Douglas Lima, the welterweight champion in Bellator, taking on former UFC title challenger Rory, the Red King McDonald from the True North. Training at TriStar. He's been at Toshido MMA in Kelowna, BC. Douglas Lima is, of course, Jed. Just to clarify, he's down at ATT Atlanta still?
Well, he has his own section. It's ATT Gwinnett, which is a suburb of Atlanta. Okay. But yeah, he trains with those two camps train together. They're professional fight teams, ATT Atlanta being my gym.
Okay. So I'll go to Jed first. I know you're of course somewhat biased on this one. You train with Lima on occasion from what I know. Douglas Lima, Roy McDonald, 170-pound championship is on the line. Who walks away the champion?
I'm super biased on this one. I think Douglas Lima is the best welterweight on the planet, full stop. I think if he wins this fight, I think he has an extremely good argument to that point. I know Tyron Woodley will always have the title because the holder of the UFC belt will be declared unanimously as that. I think Douglas Lima would have a very good shot at beating Tyron Woodley and anybody in the UFC's welterweight division because I think he is the best welterweight on the planet of Earth. I think he's going to beat Roy McDonald here. I think Roy McDonald is a great fighter. Rory McDonald has a win over Tom Woodley, and frankly, I think if they fought again, I would likely pick Rory McDonald to win that fight as well. If he can work takedowns, he can win this game. But if he's stuck on the feet, I think he is a little more limited than Douglas Lima. I think Lima can work an effective kicking game, work some low kicks. I think Lima's got enough power to hurt Rory McDonald, and I think he just kind of has a more potent striking offense, and I think he's good enough wrestling takedown or good enough takedown defense to keep it upright for the most part. I won't be super shocked if Rory McDonald is able to get here, grind out a win, stay competitive on the feet, work enough takedowns in top position. He's a guy who at one point in time was probably the best welterweight on the planet Earth. Never held that belt, and now he gets a chance to try and fight for one. But I think Douglas Lima is just too good, man. I think Douglas Lima has improved a ton since the kind of random Koreshkov loss that didn't make sense at the time. Really, it was sort of just a bad performance from him all around. There's nothing else to say. I mean, it's not like Koreshkov got lucky, but it just sort of looked like Lima was not invested to be there, wasn't ready, but then obviously came back and more than made up for that when he won the title back. So I think he's the best welterweight on the planet. I'm taking him. I think he won't be able to knock out Rory. Rory's a very, very tough dude. But I do think this fight will look a little somewhere in between the Stephen Thompson and the Robbie Lawler fights here. He's not going to stay as far. Lima's not going to stay all the way on the outside like Stephen Thompson did, but I do think Rory's going to be forced into kind of taking more, as the fight goes on, taking more desperate shots that aren't successful, and get into some more brawls in the pocket and stuff like he did with Lawler. So somewhere between those two fights is where I think Douglas Lima lives, and I think that's good enough to get the job done here. Give me a unanimous decision win for the best welterweight on the planet, Douglas Lima.
I personally think, I don't know, I mean, you guys can definitely disagree with me, but I think Bellator has 3 of the top 5 best welterweights in probably, I guess, the UFC. Well, not the UFC, but I feel like in martial arts. I feel like Andrei Koreshkov, Rory McDonald, and Douglas Lima are 3 of the greatest welterweights currently on earth. I think all 3 of them pose a lot of threats. They could pretty much beat anybody in the UFC. I feel like they all have a chance to pretty much win the title. And I feel like I'd throw them in the top 5 there, with Stephen Thompson and Tyron Woodley there, I guess, in the list as well. And I think these guys could win a UFC title. I feel like these guys could defend UFC titles. They're all really good mixed martial artists. Now to kick Koreshkov out of the picture and look at this fight, I'm really looking forward to it. I think it's going to be a pretty close affair. I think Lima's going to have the better start. I think McDonald might have the better close. But then again, McDonald, we've seen him lose a lot of fights there in the later parts of his the later rounds. We saw Damian Maia have a strong 3rd round. Robbie Lawler came back 4th and 5th round, was able to capitalize there. Also in the first fight, Carlos Condit was able to finish him in the 3rd round, But I think the Douglas Lima, I think he's got a really good chance, especially with his counter shots, because he's pretty good at landing those. Spends a lot of time on the outside, which kind of has me concerned. I'll pick against Jed. I plan on going with Rory McDonald, but in a very, very close fight. I'm actually feeling like this is going to be a split decision, to be honest. I feel like it's going to come down to 48-47 across the board, really dependent on that 3rd round. I think Lima takes the first 2, McDonald takes the last 2, and the 3rd round is kind of the swinger. So, and I'm taking McDonald just because, I don't know, I feel like it's really close. I want to pick Lima. I'm actually a pretty big Lima fan. I've followed him for a long, long time in his Bellator career, since 2012, I guess. So I've seen quite a bit of his fights. I like him. He's a cool guy. I like him actually a little bit more than McDonald, but I'm going to pick McDonald just to make it more interesting, and that was kind of my gut pick when I first saw this fight announced. But Lima's got a really good shot.
So we have some dissension yet again for the gazillionth time tonight. I get to say who is on the island, who is not. And on the island will be the biased man, Jed Meshew. I'm going Rory McDonald to win the Bellator Welterweight Championship. And does that mean that I don't think Douglas Lima is one of the best welterweights on the planet? Absolutely not. Douglas Lima fights Tyron Woodley on Saturday night. I am picking Douglas Lima to win that fight. But Roy McDonald is also one of the best welterweights on the planet, and I would pick him to beat Tyron Woodley as well in a rematch. And when it comes to a lot of these top welterweights, UFC and Bellator and anywhere else, it really comes down to style matchups, because Rory, he loses to Wonderboy the majority of the time, as we saw back in June of 2016, but Rory still beats pretty much everybody else, in my opinion. And so this is an interesting one. Douglas Lima might be able to, he's going to be able to keep him on the feet early on. I suspect he'll win the first round, just chopping down Rory's legs and pointing him on the feet. I mean, Rory's not a bad striker. He's a very, very talented striker, but I think that's where Lima will shine in this fight. But then as the fight goes on, maybe second round, maybe early in the third, I think Rory starts to become a bit more comfortable and will start looking for those takedowns and get those takedowns. I think this could look like the Paul Daly fight. Not as dominant, because I think Douglas Lima has a better grappling game than Paul Daly does. And I think he'll be able to defend on the ground better than Daly did. But I don't. That doesn't give me enough to pick Lima here. I think Rory will do his best work with ground and pound and just top control. Super interesting matchup, but just because if Rory doesn't pick up a submission, this could end up being not the most entertaining fight, just because I think it'll be a lot on the ground and not tons of action. But I hope I hope they go in and have a 5-round war on the feet, just because that'd be super fun, and that would favor Lima. But if Lima busts Rory's nose, that could be a game changer, just because we've seen that affect Rory multiple times, and he keeps getting broken. And so there's many intriguing parts of this fight, but I like Roy McDonald here. I like him to control Lima on the ground for a lot of the fight and pick up what I will say is specifically a 49-46 decision. I think Lima will win the first round, and then Roy will pick up the remaining 4. So Roy McDonald would become the new Bellator welterweight champion this Saturday night in the co-main event of Bellator 192. But hell, it's the best fight on the card. I'm calling it the main event. All right, that is it for Bellator. That is it for UFC 220. Thank you all for watching. I would assume if there's anybody watching right now, there's very few, and I just checked in. I'm not sure that there is anybody, because I don't know if the one is me or someone else. So thank you all for watching. We appreciate it. We definitely went on quite a while, but when you have a solid UFC 220 card and a solid
Let's say goodbye.
What will you do? Thank you all for watching. We appreciate it. Jed, remind everybody real quick, because you're tired. And
Wes's laptop is dying. Wes, you say goodbye first.
My screen is blurry, so I couldn't read his message.
I'll say goodbye real quick. It's all good. Because my laptop charger is not working, and it gets really hot quick, so I always have to unplug it. You can find me on Twitter at AllThatMMA. That's where I do all my social media communication. You can also find me on MMAsucker.com, where I'm trying to start a little bit more writing here and there in these upcoming months, especially when I'm done with school coming up in May. And besides that, follow me, I guess, on Instagram at Wesley Riddle. That's my real name, my full name. I'm going to be doing some, I guess, hopefully some more breakdowns on future fights, kind of like what I did, where I just kind of look at a couple different fighters and try to break it down a little bit and show you kind of what their game plan is probably going to be in the fights that they have upcoming. I've been doing that, kind of enjoy that. Besides that, I'm glad to be back on the show, hoping to keep this up every single week, and I appreciate chilling with the guys. So good seeing you both. Thanks for everybody for tuning in, and we'll see you on the next episode.
See you in 4 months, Wes.
I'll be back on. Don't you worry.
Hopefully, fingers are crossed, because this is fun. Although I gotta say, this is with you coming back, this makes the show so much longer. It's true, but that's what happens when we have how many fights did we go through? How many fights are in UFC? Like 12?
No, that's how the show gets longer. You're starting to roll an exit, and then you're just like, wait a second, how many fights did we talk about? No, we didn't. My name is Jed Meshew.
17 extra breakdowns. So
thank you for taking the time to be with us this evening, guys. My name is Jed Meshew. You can follow me on Twitter at JedKMeshew. My writing found every single day at MMAfighting.com. Give that a peep if you're feeling it. I would appreciate it. Got several columns going up there all the time. It's been fun, fellas. Time to get the fuck out of here.
No kidding. Well, we've been going on for...
No, just get out. Just leave.
You guys can find me on the Twitter at Nick Baldwin MMA. I'll let you guys know how long exactly the show was on there, because apparently, according to Jed, there's no time to talk about that now. I have many interviews recently. Please go check them out on this YouTube channel. Some of them have found their way on Bloody Elbow already. So I have interviews with Chad George, who we didn't talk about, but he fights at Bellator 192.
I love you guys. Good night.
He returns for the first time in 3 years. I talked to Mike Perry, who's fighting Max Griffin next month. No, I talked to Max Griffin, who's fighting Mike Perry next month. I talked to Shane Crushton, who's fighting Aaron Pico on Saturday. I talked to Matt Bassett, who's taking on Enrique Barzola at the UFC on Saturday. And I talked to Chuck Liddell, the Chuck Liddell. Go check that out. I'd appreciate it. And I talked to Carl Robertson. And I talked to Eric Anders. And Cody Stamen. The latter two will be up tomorrow. Oh, Jed is gone for real. Okay, that's fine. Go subscribe to this YouTube channel give us a thumbs up down there. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Feedback in the comments. We'd really appreciate it. And go check out all my writing over at Bloody Elbow. Pieces on Chad George and Shane Crushton. Well, George is up. Crushton will be up tomorrow. We appreciate it. Good night, Jed. Kind of love you, but kind of wish you stuck around for my final quotes. Thank you all for watching. We appreciate it, and enjoy the fights on Saturday.